My Star Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426 Guerrilla Warfare. The Imperial fleet will never give up. The Empire is no longer the primary civilization that was still growing. The Imperial fleet is now able to traverse the Starry Sea. In the face of any difficulties, the Imperial fleet will no longer retreat. If a small difficulty forces you to withdraw your fleet, it will leave a stalk in your heart that you will never get over. This stalk will seriously affect your state of mind and the subsequent growth of the Empire, which Mingze will never allow. Since the enemy may play mobile warfare, then your fleet will also play mobile warfare. The enemy does not have the ability of superluminal speed. The maneuverability of the Imperial fleet, which borrows superluminal speed, is far stronger than the natives of these asteroid seas. As long as it does not face these native fleets head-on, with the advantage of the hyperspace engine, the Imperial fleet can completely destroy and occupy all the enemy's living forces, colonial stars. By the time their fleet arrived, the Imperial fleet had already disappeared. Even if their conventional flight speed far exceeded that of the Empire, what was the use? Everyone enters hyperspace. The destination coordinates have been uploaded. Mingze showed a sinister smile. Because the hyperspace engine was always accumulating energy, the huge Imperial fleet disappeared into the starry sky a few minutes later. Near the Pisces Arc, which was hiding in the sea of asteroids, the Imperial fleet appeared in the starry sky after a flash of lightning. The Pisces Arc, which received Mingze's order, slowly sailed out of the sea of asteroids under the escort of a number of warships converted from transport ships. At this time, Andress, who saw the Imperial fleet through the holographic screen inside the Ark, opened her mouth in surprise. She had imagined the scale of the fleet of the Sith Empire. But her ideas were based on the Andor Empire when she was a child. Andress never expected that the expeditionary fleet of the Sith Emperor was so powerful. All the crew members on the Imperial Pisces Arc were equally unbelievable as her. Now these people are in a state of confusion and disbelief. What's the situation? Why did they sleep for a long time, and when they woke up, they not only became pirates, but their own country's fleet was so powerful? You know, before they entered hibernation, cruisers, now destroyers, were the backbone of the Empire. And now these cruisers have become the lowest existence in the fleet. Not only that, the Empire has actually created 2 larger warships, which is incredible. You have to know that although their 4 arcs were huge in size, they were built by the Empire with all its resources and construction capabilities. Moreover, the structure of the arc only reached the civilian level, and the flight speed was amazingly slow. This is completely different from the technology required to build a giant military warship. Although the Empire has become more powerful, they should feel fortunate, but everyone's heart is left with bitterness. They don't know what the meaning of boarding the Ark is. Now the Empire's fleet has caught up with them, who have been flying for more than 50 years in just 1 month. They missed the rise of the Empire in their sleep. You are safe now. Mingze connected to the communication of the Ark, but did not say much, but only one sentence. Hearing Mingze's words, all the colonists on the Ark left excited tears. The days of hiding from XZ all day long and worrying about being found are finally over. Now they are also people backed by the Empire and have roots. These low-level colonists did not know that the Ark had already contacted the Empire, and they did not know that their Emperor had descended on the Ark many times. Mingze required all important information to be kept strictly confidential. The lower-level colonists even thought that Liu Russian was the captain. The Pisces Arc flew into the Imperial fleet and aligned with the flagship after a slight adjustment. The more than 30-kilometer-long arc stood out in the Imperial fleet. The surrounding warships and the flagship dreadnought seemed to be surrounded by glass beads like basketballs. The Pisces Arc has been recovered. After a short repair, the fleet was divided into 4 groups. The command of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd fleets was returned to the commanders of each fleet. I have other uses for the Tiger Shark class fleet. Mingze simply divided the next task and cut off the connection with this body. On the Pisces Arc not far from the flagship, Mingze shook his dizzy head and climbed out of the hibernation chamber. After he changed his clothes, he went directly to Andress's lounge. Greetings, Your Majesty. Andress, who was looking at the Imperial fleet through the porthole, heard someone coming behind her and hurriedly turned around. When she saw that it was Mingze, she hurriedly greeted him. Do you see those smallest warships? Those are the fleets prepared for you. Let me take a good look at your ability. Mingze pointed to the densely packed Tiger Shark-class warships outside the window. I will definitely not disappoint your Majesty's expectations, Andress promised excitedly. She didn't expect that she would have a day to command such a large fleet. Go for revenge, go and vent your anger, Mingze said as he pulled Andress towards the bridge. Long live His Majesty! The colonists on the bridge hurriedly stood up and saluted when they saw Mingze. Even though they had left the Empire for decades, after being influenced by the statues and videos on the ship, their respect for Mingze had not diminished. From now on, the Pisces Ark will temporarily serve as the flagship of the Tiger Shark fleet, and Andress next to me will be the commander-in-chief. After Mingze finished speaking, he summoned the chair floating in the air. Andress and Mingze sat side by side on 2 chairs and floated to the center of the huge bridge of the Pisces Ark. All fleets start to set off. With Mingze's order, the fleets began to disperse to the surrounding star systems and soon disappeared into space. Our target is the W001 star system 2 light-years away. Entering hyperspace, Mingze waved his hand and marked the target point on the holographic screen. Start entering hyperspace. Estimated arrival time 39 hours and 7 minutes. 3, 2, 1. As the countdown ended, the super fleet with tens of millions of Tiger Shark-class battleships and landing ships disappeared into the universe. Mingze, an ordinary colony planet belonging to a multinational alliance. The unique white plants on this planet cover the entire surface of the planet, revealing only a few green lakes. The entire planet seems to be covered with white snow, except for the white snow and the dots of green dotted in it. There are also 4 huge space cities suspended in the orbit of this planet. Countless spaceships are traveling back and forth between the space cities and the planet. The lights on the spaceships form dozens of light bands connecting the surface of Mingze and the 4 space stations. Chapter 427 Special Seed Bomb. The people on this planet did not realize the approach of danger. For these star systems far away from the entrance of the new channel, war was still so far away. The same was true for the 4 pentagonal space cities. The main guns used to defend the space cities were not even in the charging state, but were lowered with their muzzles facing the ground. It was not until a flash of lightning broke through the starry sky that the tranquility on this planet was broken. 10 million warships suddenly appeared in the space near this planet. It was not until several minutes after the fleet appeared that the alarm sounded in all the cities. But in these few short minutes, the Empire's warships had begun to divide into 4 groups and accelerated to approach the 4 space cities. The fortress guns in the space cities only remembered their functions at this time, but charging energy would consume them for several minutes. In addition, the huge fortress guns were very slow to rotate. When the Imperial fleet entered the effective missile launch range, these bulky fortress guns had just pointed their muzzles at the Imperial fleet. Fire! The commanders on both sides shouted at the same time. Hundreds of millions of cruise missiles were launched from the Tiger Shark-class warships. These cruise missiles were much larger than ordinary missiles, so each Tiger Shark-class warship only carried 10. In contrast to these hundreds of millions of cruise missiles were the fortress cannons from the space city. Hundreds of thousands of huge plasma balls dragged long blue tails and flew towards the distant Imperial fleet. The high-temperature plasma bounded by a special magnetic field rushed towards the Imperial fleet with terrifying energy. The cruise missiles of the Imperial fleet first encountered these plasma balls, and the auxiliary thrusters on the cruise missiles began to work, helping the cruise missiles to easily dodge the oncoming plasma bombs. Then, the plasma shells, which were several times faster than the missiles, first blasted into the Empire's Tiger Shark fleet. Unfortunately, the distance was too far, giving the Imperial fleet enough time to dodge, and only a few thousand Tiger Shark-class warships were dissolved by the plasma balls. While the plasma fortress cannons of the space city were cooling down, the cruise missiles had already approached the vicinity of the city. With a burst of fire, all the cruise missiles left their fuel-exhausted thrusters behind. The warhead of the cruise missile began to split in all directions, revealing 7 small warheads. These sub-cruise missiles are designed to deal with fixed targets with a large number of artillery batteries. As the ground deck of the Alliance space city shook, a number of close-in defense artillery batteries rose from under the deck and aimed at the incoming missiles. There was another burst of fire, and the 7 warheads carried in the warhead suddenly broke away from the missile body and accelerated to disperse and rush towards the space city. The close-in defense guns of the space city also began to work, and blue plasma shells were fired at the approaching warheads. As the plasma shells hit the flying warheads, blue light balls began to flash continuously in space. These light balls were the light produced by the diffusion of high-temperature plasma. Although it seemed that the space city could block this wave of attacks, the Major of the Alliance, the highest commander in the space city, did not think so. A strong sense of crisis gradually rose in his heart. What is the reason? He frowned and thought nervously. As his eyes swept across the warheads that kept flying on the screen, a flash of inspiration instantly flashed through his mind. On the screen, the original missile warhead, which had been opened and turned into useless parts, flew at high speed along with the warhead and attracted his attention. Damn it! These bullets are just a trick. The real ones, but unfortunately, he found out too late. A violent flash of light lit up from the outer layer of the 4 space cities. The seemingly solid city shields only lasted for a few seconds before being broken by the nuclear explosion. A huge energy shock wave swept across the sky above the entire city, and all the weapons exposed outside the armor were completely destroyed by this shock wave. The city buildings on the surface of the space city were also turned into ashes by this energy shock wave. However, the residents in the city escaped because they hid in the shelter underground of the space city. The heavy armor between the shelter and the city blocked the energy shock wave. The commander stared at the holographic screen that had turned into a snowflake in amazement. He knew that they were completely defeated and there was no chance to save the defeat. Except for small anti-aircraft missiles, no weapons survived in the space city. All the cards in their hands have been played. The damn Empire is so insidious. According to normal people's thinking, once the submunitions are dispersed, the mother warhead loses its function and becomes an empty shell. All the warheads are in the dispersed bullets, but the Empire took advantage of the normal people's thinking errors. The Empire's submunitions and bullets are used to attract close-in weapons to attack. The real warhead, that is, the nuclear weapon, is hidden in the seemingly abandoned mother warhead. Unfortunately, the Alliance, which thinks according to normal people's thinking, was fooled. In order to improve the interception efficiency, their close-in weapons only intercepted all the bullets. The mother warhead that looks like a piece of scrap iron was ignored by all the close-in guns. These mother warheads broke through their carefully designed iron curtain defense line without any damage. Quick! Inform the Alliance of the Sith Empire's tactics. Although we have failed, we can provide a warning for future generations. The commander gritted his teeth and ordered the signalman. No, sir. Our signal has been blocked by the enemy. Not only that, all the communication satellites were affected by the explosion just now. The orbit of our planet is as clean as our current space city. The communicator pointed to the space city where all the buildings on the Foundation had been destroyed by the nuclear explosion. Seeing this, the commander couldn't help but thank the designer who designed the space city. In order to prevent cosmic disasters or wars, a thick layer of armor was specially put on the foundation of the space city. Unexpectedly, it was this layer of armor that saved their lives today. Just when the Space City Command Center and the Ground Command Center were blind to the situation in orbit because all the observation satellites were destroyed, thousands of landing craft began to rush towards the Alliance's space station. As the landing crafts were attached to the outer armor of the space station, high-powered cutting machines began to cut the heavy armor bit by bit. Fully armed Death soldiers rushed into the space city through the open gap. Everyone, don't move. Put down your weapons, don't move. Put your hands up, as the suicide soldiers who landed in the space city shouted. The desperate staff and civilians hiding in the foundation of the space city knelt on the ground trembling and raised their hands. Chapter 428 Landing. Bang! A burst of explosion sounded from the gate, and a dazzling light lit up from the broken gate. The person in charge and commander of the Alliance Space City stretched out his hand to block the dazzling light and looked at the open door of the control room. Raise your hands, don't make any resistance. With a roar, dozens of Imperial soldiers in great power armor rushed in. The person in charge of the Space City subconsciously wanted to take out the pistol at his waist. Unexpectedly, before his hand touched the gun handle, after a burst of gunfire, the person in charge spit blood and fell to the ground and lost his voice. This scene scared everyone in the control room to kneel down obediently, with their hands raised high, not daring to make any extra movements. The resistance has been killed. It looks like a big fish. What a pity. A soldier who looked like a captain in the soldier team came over and scanned the body of the person in charge of the space city and sighed regretfully. Report to the headquarters, Space City number 01 has been occupied by us. Report to the headquarters. 02 inches report to the headquarters. Space City number 04 has been occupied. Hearing the reports sent back from various places, Li Mingze nodded with satisfaction. Andress came back to her senses now. She didn't expect that the power of the Empire's fleet was so strong that it had already captured the seemingly impregnable Space City before officially contacting the enemy. She didn't know that this was the result of Li Mingze's order to the fleet to control the power of the missiles. He didn't intend to occupy a bunch of planets that had become rebels because their relatives were killed. Although it was not difficult to clean up these rebels, it would delay a large number of Empire landing troops, greatly affecting the Empire's progress in assimilating these planets. In order to avoid such a situation, Li Mingze ordered the troops to control the power of the nuclear bombs and prevent them from blowing up the foundation of the Space City. The orbit of this planet has been controlled by us, and all landing troops are ready to airdrop. The first wave of aliens, the second wave of robot troops, and the third wave of death troops, all landing troops must complete the occupation mission within 3 days. After 3 days, we will go to the next target. Li Mingze was worried that Andress was not familiar with the Empire's combat methods, so he issued an order for her. After receiving the order, thousands of alien landing ships unfolded the armor on the bottom of the ship, and balls of meat wrapped in aliens were thrown down from the warships. Because of the quick victory, these alien landing ships no longer landed on the ground to become hatching towers. As the alien troops began to enter the atmosphere, blue bullets began to be fired from the ground. It seemed that the air defense facilities on the ground began to work, but because the alien troops were still outside the atmosphere, these shells did not hurt them at all and dissipated in the air. Have the orbital auxiliary satellites been deployed? Li Mingze turned around and asked the officer beside him. The orbital auxiliary satellites have been deployed, and all ground attack weapons are operating normally. Should we start clearing the landing area? The officer nodded and replied. Start clearing the landing area, send out the robot troops. And wait 2 hours for the orbital airborne troops to directly enter the surface on the landing ships. Li Mingze believed that after several rounds of attacks by the orbital auxiliary satellites, there should not be many air defense facilities left on the ground. Instead of wasting resources to airdrop troops, it is better to send transport ships to send troops to the ground directly, which can also save a lot of landing space resources. As blue beams of light shot from the satellite to the ground, hundreds of small gray bubbles suddenly rose on the ground of Misisi. These bubbles are the dust raised by the shock waves generated by orbital weapons on the ground. After a few seconds, the anti-aircraft firepower on the entire Misisi planet was reduced by 90%. The rest came from mobile anti-aircraft weapons that can maneuver at high speed. Almost done, the robot troops begin to land. Thousands of warships separated from the Imperial fleet and rushed to the surface of Misisi. As these landing ships flew into the atmosphere, the external shields began to rub against the atmosphere and emit dazzling light. At this time, hundreds of new barrages suddenly rose from the depths of the forest on the ground. It seems that these people have been waiting for the Empire's landing troops to enter Misisi. All transport ships transfer all their energy to the shield module. Andress finally had the opportunity to play and ordered into the communicator. Li Mingze, who was standing aside, smiled helplessly at the nervous Andress. This level of attack can't break the shield of our landing ship, unless they focus their fire. Before Li Mingze finished speaking, he saw that these barrages were really aimed at the 100 transport ships and shot over. Damn, Li Mingze couldn't help but swear. The transport ships that are being targeted should immediately airdrop all units. After sighing, Li Mingze put down the communicator. It depends on luck how many robot troops can be saved. The 100 transport ships that received the order opened the armor around them, and robots began to eject from the transport ships one by one. A few seconds later, hundreds of barrages hit the 100 landing ships that were being targeted. The shields of these landing ships were shattered by the shells from the large anti-aircraft guns, and the armor of the transport ships only lasted for a few seconds before being penetrated. After a burst of blue light hit the transport ship, hundreds of angry people rose in the air. Use orbital weapons to blow up all suspicious locations on this planet. I don't care if they are civilian bases or not. Li Mingze was enraged by these people and issued orders to the fleet directly bypassing Andress. Orbital attack warheads flew out of the battleships and fell to the surface, and mushroom clouds rose in a large number of forests. All residents and soldiers on Misisi, give up resistance. Your orbit has been occupied by us. In the name of the Emperor of the Sith Empire, I guarantee that your lives will not change much if you surrender, but if you continue to resist stubbornly, once one of our battleships is destroyed, we will destroy one of your cities. Li Mingze decided not to play with these ignorant people and must end the battle as soon as possible. These words had a very good effect. After the people on Mingze received the message sent by the Empire through television, computers, and personal terminals, messages of surrender came from all over the ground. As soon as the alien troops landed, the local people surrendered to the Empire. Not only that, the new anti-aircraft guns that had been appearing all the time disappeared, and the Empire's landing ships were no longer attacked. Very good. As a reward for your obedience, all those who surrender will become second-class citizens of the Empire. Li Mingze closed the communicator with satisfaction and looked at Andress on the side. In this battle, Andress felt that she was just a decoration and had no chance to perform at all. Chapter 429 Late Reinforcements. Ahem, I'm here to make you familiar with the Empire's combat methods. You will be in charge of the future battles. Li Mingze coughed twice after seeing Andress's frustrated expression. Now we have basically taken over this planet. The alien troops and 1 million orbital airborne troops will stay to occupy this planet and resist possible enemy reinforcements. All the remaining troops return to the fleet, and we will go to the next target. After arranging the task, Li Mingze handed over the authority to Andress. A few hours later, the orbital airborne troops, who had circled around on the ground without firing a shot, boarded the transport ship and returned to the fleet. Only 5 million alien troops and 1 million orbital airborne troops were left on Mingze. All the remaining troops have returned to the fleet, and there are countless defensive weapons left on the ground. The soldiers who stayed behind will use these weapons to persist until the end of the entire war. Although Li Mingze knew that only a few of these people would survive when the war ended, these orbital airborne troops must be sacrificed for the war. Li Mingze had no feelings for the sacrifice of the orbital airborne troops, who were all non-citizens of the Empire. These people were just data. On the ground of Mingze, the soldiers who stayed behind looked up at the sky. As the bright lights in the sky disappeared, they knew that the Empire's fleet had left, and they could only rely on themselves. With the efforts of the airborne soldiers, fortresses began to stand in various parts of the city. The alien troops also hid in various buildings in the city, quietly waiting for the enemy to come. 3 days later, the Alliance's fleet finally arrived at Mingze, but the Sith Empire's fleet had long disappeared, leaving them with countless debris floating in orbit. The original 4 space cities were blown to ashes by the Empire's fleet after the population was transferred. Sir, we are late. Mingze has been occupied by the enemy. A soldier in the bridge of the Alliance fleet flagship bowed his head to the masked man sitting in the command seat. The masked man angrily smashed the console. Send out the landing troops. Take this planet back from me. Report to the commander. The asset planet 3 light-years away has just been attacked by the Empire, and the orbital space station on asset planet has been destroyed. When the information was sent, a soldier ran to the masked man and reported breathlessly. Damn it. We can't catch up with these warships of the Sith Empire by relying on sublight speed flight. The masked man gritted his teeth and said. From the beginning to the end, we can only follow them to clean up the mess. If this goes on, our planet, the reality is a little different from what he expected. Originally, he planned to lead the Alliance fleet to use the kite-flying tactics to wear out the Empire's fleet bit by bit. But now the situation is reversed. The Sith Empire knows that they don't have the technology to fly faster than the speed of light and actually fights a guerrilla war with him. In just these 7 or 8 days, he has received at least 10 messages about planets being attacked by the Empire fleet. Helplessly, the Alliance fleet that gathered together could only divide its troops into several routes and take back the occupied planets bit by bit. Ignore the new distress message. By the time we get there, the planet will have been occupied. We have to recapture the occupied planets bit by bit. Deploy troops to Mississippi immediately. The masked man waved his hand and lay down on the chair. Soon, landing ships from the Alliance fleet separated from the fleet and flew towards the ground. To the Alliance's surprise, they did not encounter any anti-aircraft weapons during the landing process, which made the orbital weapons they prepared useless. The thrusters on both sides of the landing ship blew the dust on the ground into the air, and the wide and heavy ship body fell heavily to the ground. As the deck of the landing ship fell to the ground, armored vehicles rushed out of the transport ship, followed by dense Alliance infantry. Save! 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 No enemies found. The soldiers who were scattered and on guard raised their hands and made a safe gesture. There was not even a shadow of the enemy around their landing area. Could it be that all the Imperial troops had retreated? Meet up with other troops and move toward the city. The commander of the squad got on an armored vehicle nearby. A squad consisting of 10 armored vehicles and 200 infantrymen began to move toward the nearest city. Such scenes appeared around all cities on the entire Mississippi Star, and all troops strangely did not encounter a single enemy. After more than an hour of traveling, a city consisting of countless gray skyscrapers appeared in front of the troops. All troops have not encountered any enemies. The enemy may have retreated or hidden in the city. Request an orbital scan of the city ahead. The commander of the squadron connected to the fleet's communication. The fleet received it and will start scanning in 5 seconds. A burst of noise came from the communicator. Then, a light curtain visible to the naked eye descended from the sky and scanned the entire city several times in sequence. Scan completed. Information is being sent. The voice of the fleet communications officer sounded again in the communicator. A few seconds later, a hologram of the entire city appeared in front of the commander. All residents have been locked up in various buildings. Is this to prevent us from using weapons of mass destruction? Interesting. The commander showed an ambiguous smile at the corner of his mouth. Report to the headquarters. A large number of enemies disguised as civilians have been found in the building complex ahead. Request carpet bombing. The commander directly connected the communicator to the Air Force responsible for assisting the ground battle. The Air Command received the message. We are about to start carpet bombing the target. As soon as the voice fell, 3 triangular bombers with a wingspan of at least 50 meters dived down from the clouds. These bombers did not know what the target they were going to bomb was. They attacked completely in accordance with the request of the ground forces. As the 3 mushroom clouds slowly rose, the large building clusters hiding tens of thousands of citizens and hundreds of orbital airborne troops were reduced to ashes. Seeing the buildings being wiped out, the commander's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. What kind of citizens are not important to him? Anyway, they are not citizens of his country. Although it is now an alliance and a collective, the lives of people in other countries are not taken seriously by him. What's more, now this place has lost contact with the outside world. The only one who can communicate with the outside world is their troops. Even if he massacred civilians, all the truth has been turned into powder by the bomb, and no one can prove what he did. Chapter 430, Self-Destruction of Civilians? The material has been found. Shall we start the second step of the plan? On the rooftop of a black high-rise building thousands of meters away from the destroyed building, a man covered in a black cloak put down the telescope in his hand and pressed the intercom on his ear. We can start the second step. A cold male voice came from the other end of the phone. Yes, sir. Attention, Team 2, start releasing civilians. Don't forget to ask them to bring gifts. The man in black robes crawled on the edge of the rooftop again after saying that, staring at the street below with the telescope in his hand. Soon, a large group of men, women, old and young, rushed out of the buildings and ran towards the direction of the Alliance ground forces. However, what was eye-catching was the various backpacks these civilians were carrying. Don't go any further. Stop immediately. Seeing these civilians rushing towards their team regardless of anything, the commander hurriedly picked up the loudspeaker and shouted loudly. But the panicked crowd didn't listen to his words at all. For these civilians, the Alliance army in front was undoubtedly their hope of survival. As long as they ran there, they would be completely safe. The things they carry are suspicious. They may be disguised bombs of the enemy. Everyone, get ready. Open fire immediately once these people get close to the 200-meter cordon. The commander ordered nervously after seeing that each of the approaching civilians had a large backpack on their backs. Hearing this, the originally hesitant soldiers tightened their rifles in their hands. Sympathy or kindness was not as important as their lives. These soldiers also found the backpacks on the backs of all the civilians, and they immediately dispelled their doubts. Stop moving forward immediately, or we will open fire, the commander shouted again. Now that there are so many witnesses, he is also afraid that he will be branded as a massacre of civilians. The people who rushed to the front began to hesitate when they saw the soldiers pointing their guns at them. But the people behind them did not know what was happening in front, and they were still rushing forward blindly. In this way, the people in the front row were pushed across the cordon little by the people behind them. With the sound of gunfire, the civilians who were running fell down in rows like cutting wheat. The ground was stained red with people's blood. Even if the people behind had noticed something was wrong, it was too late. The Alliance troops were not equipped with old gunpowder weapons. These electromagnetic weapons could easily penetrate several people. It took only 20 seconds from the time the soldiers started firing to the time the last row of people were torn apart by bullets and fell to the ground. As the magazines of the soldiers' rifles were empty and made a clicking sound, the soldiers who kept pulling the triggers by relying on their body inertia came to their senses. The wall of people in front of them had already disappeared. Very good. Perfect. The second step is completed. The black-robed man lying on the roof couldn't help but excitedly pat the ground after seeing the last person fall. Video data starts uploading. Pay attention to receiving it. The black-robed man slid the terminal on his arm and sent all the collected data to a building in the center of the city. The soldiers who fired did not notice that the miniature cameras in several directions around them began to self-decompose into a pile of debris. And in a building in the center of the city, a black-robed man received the video data and quickly came to the platform on the top of the building with a box containing equipment. He carefully placed the box in his hand flat on the ground, and then the box shook, and several signal transmitters began to stretch out from the inside of the box to the sky. An electromagnetic wave carrying video data was sent to the orbit of Mingze. A satellite in orbit disguised as debris sent the received information to the distant starry sky. By the time the Alliance fleet detected the signal, the satellite had completed its mission and turned into a ball of fire. At this time on Asa, the Empire Tiger Shark fleet led by Andreas had destroyed all the buildings and facilities in the orbit of the planet. All that was left was to send troops to land on the surface of the planet to completely end the Alliance's control over the planet. Your Majesty, I received an encrypted message. Qiu's voice appeared in Li Mingze's ears. Oh? Has the plan been completed? Li Mingze's eyes lit up. Yes, the dedicated video editor has completed the modification of the video. Are we? Qiu's voice was very sure. Send the video to all fleets immediately. In addition, start invading all networks on this planet. We are going to show movies to these natives. Li Ming smiled playfully. A few minutes later, all the residents on Asa suddenly found that their computers, TVs, and personal terminals were hijacked by the network and lost control. This is the Alliance you believe in. They are cruel and cold-blooded, and they don't care about the safety of you civilians at all. As a woman's voice sounded, a picture shot from the window of a building appeared on the screen. In the picture, a team of Alliance soldiers stopped not far away and pointed their guns at the building. As the camera turned, the building was full of civilians, and the Empire's orbital airborne troops were distributing food and water to these people. Our Empire took in these refugees based on the principle of humanity, but we never expected that these scum of the Alliance didn't care about the lives of civilians at all. As the voice in the picture became a little bleak, the video screen looked out the window again. In the sky, 3 warships painted with Alliance roared out of the clouds and flew towards the building where the video was. As 3 black dots fell from the plane in the video, the picture suddenly darkened. Just when the people watching had an ominous premonition, the picture suddenly changed and became a picture shot from a tall building in the distance. A building complex with a radius of several kilometers was suddenly surrounded by flashes and fireballs after the 3 black dots fell. When the dust from the explosion cleared, there was only a huge crater left at the original location of the building. Our Empire will not capture any civilians in accordance with the principle of humanity. We distribute supplies for their survival and let them leave the war zone and go to the safe zone protected by the Alliance. The video screen changed again. Dozens of soldiers put bottles of water, food and clothes into backpacks. After receiving the backpack full of supplies, the civilians were so excited that they shed tears and kept thanking the Imperial soldiers. The faces of the Imperial soldiers in the picture were also full of peace, and they smiled and helped the civilians carry their backpacks. You should leave quickly. This will soon become a war zone, and it may be carpet-bombed. The war between our countries has nothing to do with you civilians. This is our soldiers' business, an Imperial officer said to the civilians carrying backpacks. Comrades, please vote for this book. Please vote. Chapter 431 Unlocking the Alien Shackles. Remember, the farther you are from here, the better. This place may be blown into ruins at any time. The officer patted the nearest civilian on the shoulder and helped the civilian straighten his collar. Thank you, officers, thank you. The civilians excitedly opened the closed doors of the high-rise building and rushed out. This scene was played out in several buildings at the same time. Thousands of civilians were sent out of the building with survival supplies. But the cruelty of the Alliance is beyond imagination. They are afraid that the refugees will slow down their marching speed and consume supplies, so they will kill all the refugees. The voice in the video became a little choked. A wide road appeared in the picture, and a group of civilians were happily running towards the Alliance convoy that had just appeared. Just when they were about 200 meters away from the convoy, the soldiers in the convoy opened fire on the running civilians. Rows of civilians were shattered by bullets, their torsos and heads. In just 20 seconds, the civilians who had just been sent out by the Empire were left with only gravel on the ground. Many viewers who were disgusted by the video began to vomit. The picture was too bloody. All the people in NASA who saw this video were full of disgust towards this so-called alliance. We are the Sith Empire, strong, prosperous, stable and free. We came here with the friendly idea of establishing a co-prosperity zone in the asteroid sea. Unexpectedly, we were attacked by the Alliance fleet, but we, the Sith Empire, will not inflict our anger on your people. Our enemies are only the Alliance soldiers. Join our Sith Empire, and you will live a completely different and perfect new life than before. Join the Empire. Become a member of the Empire. As the video finished playing, most people had the idea of surrendering. In addition to the foreshadowing at the beginning of the video and the final bewitching words, some background music in France that were improved according to psychology also played a role in making people let down their guard and accept the Empire. Your Majesty, we have received surrender information from more than 300 military bases. Andrews turned to report to Li Mingze on the side. Very good, strive to take this planet without bloodshed. I want to make the people of the Alliance sick to death. Ha ha ha. Li Mingze did not expect that this video would be so effective. When these soldiers were in a desperate situation and the orbit had been occupied by the Imperial fleet, a video easily broke through their psychological defenses. The defense forces composed of the natives of these planets must have lost their favor towards the Alliance after watching the video. Start sending troops to land and eliminate all the discordant voices for me. Li Mingze turned and left a bridge. Landing ships began to fly towards the surface of Asa. This time, the attacks on these landing ships were very limited. Only the remaining troops who had not watched the video or were more determined were resisting. However, these troops were soon wiped out by the multi-party attack of the Imperial ground forces. Everyone, please pay attention. Please do not leave your residence during the war to prevent a battle from accidentally injuring you. Every Monday, we will place survival supplies at the designated location, and then you can go out to get supplies. This state will continue until the Alliance is defeated. Please treat it as a small vacation. It won't last too long. The patrol cars of the Imperial Army began to drive into the city, and the loudspeakers on the cars kept playing warnings. Meanwhile, on the star Mingze, light years away, the Empire's remaining troops were caught in a bitter battle. As the Alliance troops continued to deploy troops to the ground, the Empire's orbital airborne troops were defeated. Facing an enemy with dozens of times the number, the slight quality advantage could not save the war. Calling headquarters, the orbital airborne troops on the star Mingze have lost more than 700,000 people and eliminated 1.6 million enemy troops. I think it's time to untie the shackles of the aliens. At this time, the black-robed man who was transmitting the video to the Empire connected to the communication with the Empire. However, at this time, he was already covered in wounds, and it was obvious that he had experienced a lot of battles. Command received, start to untie the alien shackles, in order to drag the Alliance's large forces on the star Mingze and make them unable to move. Li Mingze passed this crazy backup plan. The many aliens that were originally hidden in the city suddenly froze in place, and did not regain their vitality until a few seconds later, but at this time their eyes began to reveal a hint of wildness. With waves of wriggling, the tails of these aliens began to turn into a huge incubator, and white eggs were spit out from the incubator. After excreting 3 eggs, the aliens began to run towards the nearest food. They had just consumed too much energy in hatching, so they continued to eat. Yes, the so-called unshackles means that the red dot cancels the control over these aliens. The aliens that have lost control will begin to develop towards the mother under the specific genes bared by the Empire. However, due to genetic defects, they will not become the mother, but can only become a product sandwiched between the two. And because of this change, these aliens will only have a short lifespan of 2 days. Although they can lay eggs, these eggs also have genetic defects and can only survive for 2 days, and cannot reproduce the next generation again. But that's enough, as the aliens captured soldiers and civilians one by one and took them back to the hiding place. The aliens stuffed all the eggs they laid into the human bodies they brought back. These eggs will take half a day to develop into shape, and during this period, the aliens can continue to hunt and lay eggs. The number of alien troops began to increase exponentially. The reason why this tactic was not used at the beginning was that these aliens would not distinguish between friend and foe after the shackles were removed, and anyone would become their food, including the Empire's orbital airborne troops. This is also the reason why the shackles were not removed until the orbital airborne army was doomed. In just one day, countless aliens jumped out of the building and headed towards the Alliance troops patrolling the streets. Soon, the sound of firing began to be heard on the street. As time passed, more and more aliens were hatched, and the gunfire on the street became more and more frequent. After a few hours, the gunfire on the street had become sparse, leaving only the screams of the soldiers. The Alliance fleet in orbit was stunned by the huge changes on the ground. They did not expect that so many monsters would appear on this planet in just 2 days. Sir, we can't continue to send troops. At our current position, we have sacrificed more than 20 million soldiers. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432, Purifying the Planet. The masked man fell into silence. He was a little hesitant. Since he could not continue to send troops to the ground, the planet occupied by the Empire below would have only one fate. Prepare the Star Destroyer and purify this planet, the masked man gritted his teeth and ordered. A large transport ship left the fleet and came above the planet. As the armor on its belly slowly unfolded to both sides, a red missile was revealed. The entire missile was 200 meters long and 50 meters in diameter. Unlock all limiters, launch the Star Destroyer. The masked man pressed the button in front of him hard. The red Star Destroyer shot from the belly of the transport ship toward the planet. After the Star Destroyer passed through the atmosphere, the warhead began to emit a red light. In an instant, the Star Destroyer sank into the ground with the help of the laser drill at the warhead. After confirming that the Star Destroyer was functioning normally, the masked man hurriedly picked up the intercom. All warships, prepare for the impact. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge magma bubble suddenly rose from the place where the Star Destroyer had sunk, and it continued to grow and spread to the surroundings. In the city not far from the explosion point, the survivors had already seen this huge magma bubble. They felt a breath of death approaching, but they had no way out. The magma bubble was too close to them. Almost in the blink of an eye, the magma bubble spread to their city. With a violent tremor, the earth was lifted up, and countless high-rise buildings collapsed and were submerged by magma. No one in the city, whether it was the aliens, orbital airborne troops, civilians or soldiers of the Alliance, could survive. In a few seconds, the magma bubble that spread wildly and the violent earthquake that followed turned the entire city into ashes. The black-robed man who is responsible for transmitting information to the Empire stood on the top floor of the high-rise building and calmly forgot to take a look at the magma rushing towards him, then closed his eyes and let the magma devour his body. A few seconds later, the hatch of a consciousness descending device in the blue brick building of the Empire's secret operations office slowly opened, and a middle-aged man sat up suddenly with a trace of fear in his eyes. The feeling of being slowly devoured by magma is really too painful, and those who have experienced it will never want to experience it again. In the orbit of Asa, Mingze, who was browsing the information of the surrendered troops of Asa, was suddenly interrupted by Qiuayu's voice. Your Majesty, the planet Mingze was destroyed by the Alliance, and now the planet has become a dead planet with no grass. All our orbital airborne troops were sacrificed, the alien troops were annihilated, and no one survived on the planet Mingze. Qiuayu's voice was a little low. Although she was used to all kinds of cruel scenes, she still felt a little heavy when facing the annihilation of all the people on a planet. Has the video data been sent? Mingze opened his eyes, and his eyes also revealed a trace of reluctance, but he forced it to the bottom of his heart. Yes, Your Majesty, the entire process of the destruction of the planet Mingze has been recorded by our hidden satellite. Modify it and send it to the various armies. We want to let these people see what kind of people they expect from the Alliance army. These Alliance people will never know that they have pushed themselves into the abyss step by step. Mingze seemed to have seen the expressions of the Alliance people when they found out that he was spreading the video. "Your Majesty is wise." Qiu's voice gradually faded away. A few hours later, the modified video began to spread on all the planets that had been occupied by the Empire or were being occupied. The people who were still hesitating threw themselves into the arms of the Empire. After all, these Alliance soldiers were not their own troops and would not care about their lives at all. In just one day, almost all the planets that the Empire was occupying surrendered to the Empire's army, leaving only a small number of rebels still resisting. However, one thing was beyond Li Mingze's expectation, that is, the residents of the occupied areas asked the Empire to provide them with protection. Because they didn't know whether their planet would be the next to be destroyed. Just when Li Mingze didn't know whether he should stay to protect them, a piece of intelligence suddenly came. The fleet of the Alliance is retreating across the board. They seem to have retreated to the three most core and developed star systems in the asteroid sea. The star system surrounded by these three star systems is the capital of the multinational alliance, where all the heads of state are hiding. It seems that they are scared by our guerrilla warfare. A large number of their troops were wiped out by the ambushes we left on various planets. These cowards plan to protect their headquarters first. Don't pay attention to these fleets. Send out surveillance troops to monitor these four star systems. The remaining fleets continue to advance steadily and occupy other colonies for me. Li Mingze did not intend to do as these people wished. Don't you just want to fight a decisive battle? I will slowly devour your territory. That's right. After paying the lives of 80 million soldiers and 2 colonies, the Alliance army gave up the idea of taking back the territory bit by bit. By then, even if those planets are taken back, the soldiers' pensions and the reconstruction of each planet will be enough for them to drink a pot, not to mention that if the enemy uses biological weapons again, they will continue to purify the entire planet. By then, all he could get back was a piece of wasteland. So at the strong request of the leaders of many countries, the masked man had to withdraw all the fleets to the headquarters of the multinational alliance. In the next month or so, the Empire's fleet was like a no man's land, conquering cities and territories everywhere in the asteroid sea. In less than 2 months, all the colonies were occupied, but the cost was that the aliens and robots carried by the fleet had been used up, and even the orbital airborne troops were only 1 million people left. All the rest were sent to various planets for occupation work. Thanks to the withdrawal of the Alliance fleet, the people who felt abandoned were quickly bewitched by the Empire's propaganda, and they surrendered and joined the Empire's big family and became second-class citizens. The armies on various planets surrendered after knowing that they were abandoned. After all, most of them were locals. Since their relatives and friends had surrendered, it was useless for them to persist. After the situation on each planet was basically stabilized, the Alliance and the Empire finally ushered in the final decisive battle. More than 10 million Imperial fleets were divided into 3 parts. One Imperial fleet, leading 3.3 million Tiger Shark-class battleships, stopped outside the 3 outermost star systems of the Alliance headquarters, waiting for orders. Chapter 433 The long-awaited decisive battle. What's the situation? Li Mingze, Andres, Qiu and others sat in the bridge of the Ark. The seats were surrounded by holographic images, as if they were in the sky above the entire star system. Under Li Mingze and others' feet was the first fleet of the Empire, and in front of them was the enemy fleet. The enemy will definitely use their mobility advantage to launch a swimming attack. When the battle begins, ignore them. Rush directly to the other end of the star system and jump into hyperspace. We will go straight to their hometown. Li Mingze sneered and ordered Lei Ming and others who were waiting for his order. Yes, Lei Ming and others saluted and their figures disappeared into the air. The 3 Imperial fleets began to accelerate slowly and rush towards the position of the Alliance fleet. Seeing the Imperial fleet rushing, the Alliance fleet immediately became excited. They had been looking forward to this day for a long time. Watching their country being swallowed by the Imperial fleet every day, and they could only stay in the headquarters waiting for the decisive battle, it really made many soldiers feel suffocated. Today they can finally let out a sigh of relief. They want to vent all the grievances they have suffered for more than a month on the fleet of the Sith Empire. Launch missiles and keep a distance from the enemy fleet. The masked man sat in the command center of the Alliance headquarters and remotely controlled the entire battle. Missiles flew out from the Alliance fleet and intercepted the rushing Imperial fleet. However, what puzzled these Alliance soldiers was that the missile range of the Sith Empire was obviously longer than theirs, but until they launched the missiles, the Sith Empire fleet showed no signs of firing, and they didn't even open the cover of the missile launcher. The flying missiles arrived in front of the Imperial fleet in the blink of an eye, and the close-in defense guns on the Imperial warships began to spray beams at these missiles crazily. Fireworks bloomed in space, and countless missiles were shattered by close-in defense weapons. However, some missiles that escaped the interception net still hit the shield of the Imperial warship, and the explosion caused a ripple on the shield. "Don't fight back, keep moving forward." Li Mingze and his team's arc followed closely in the fleet. This arc had already discarded useless production building modules and upgraded its thrusters. The heavy arc's flying speed was no different from that of the warships in the Imperial fleet. The only drawback was that these thrusters were disposable. What are they doing? Why don't they fight back? Do they want to fight in close combat? Humph, I won't give you this chance. All warships retreat immediately. Don't let the Imperial fleet get close to you. The masked man thought he had seen through the Empire's tactics. After several hours, the Empire's fleet had survived several rounds of missile fire, but due to the presence of close-in defense guns, the shields of many warships were not damaged too much. Move to other quadrants and don't give them a chance to get close to you. The masked man remained unmoved as he watched the Imperial fleet get closer and closer to the planet they were protecting. But when the Empire's fleet flew over the planet and continued to fly forward, he felt something was wrong. Stop them. Their target is the Alliance headquarters. The masked man was shocked. And the Alliance fleet hurriedly accelerated to chase the Imperial fleet. Unexpectedly, just when the Alliance fleet approached the Imperial fleet's range, the Imperial fleet suddenly turned its guns and fired a volley at them. Tens of millions of light beams streaked across the starry sky, piercing and exploding the approaching Alliance warships. In the blink of an eye, the Alliance fleet lost tens of thousands of warships, which really made the masked man heartbroken. We were fooled. They wanted to lure us over and continue to keep the distance, the masked man snorted coldly. He never expected that the Empire would take advantage of their eagerness to protect the Alliance headquarters and lead them into the range. However, they would not give the Imperial fleet another chance. The well-prepared sea of missiles would overwhelm the Imperial fleet in a few minutes. All warships are ready to fire all missiles. The enemy fleet's shields are running low, the masked man sneered while playing with a metal ball in his hand. Unexpectedly, dozens of seconds later, before the Alliance launched missiles, the Imperial fleet suddenly disappeared in the universe. The masked man's pupils shrank. He had been fighting with the Empire for a long time, and had long understood that the Empire's fleet had entered the so-called hyperspace. All warships should return to the Alliance headquarters immediately, raise the highest level alarm immediately and let everyone hide in the underground bunker. The masked man stood up from his seat and walked out of the control room. He knew that the war was about to burn to his planet, and it was no longer safe here. A day later, near Mingze, where the Alliance headquarters was located, 3 huge fleets appeared in the starry sky one after another. Li Mingze and others saw this planet for the first time, which gathered all the leaders of civilizations in the asteroid starfish cluster. There was only a small amount of land on the light blue planet, and white clouds covered this blue gem. At the north pole of Mingze, a round tower-shaped building tens of thousands of meters high stood in the center of the north pole of Mingze. The entire tower seemed to be made up of a pile of disks from bottom to top. The white surface of the tower was sprayed white, and each huge platform was full of plants. This is it, the most solid fortress of the Alliance, the Tower of Co-Prosperity, the headquarters of the Alliance. Andrus looked at the giant building and explained slowly. This building is the symbol of power built by the murderer who killed her father. All fleets are on alert in the orbit of this planet, and the landing troops are ready to airdrop. Use the planetary scanning device carried by the Ark to scan this planet and locate the possible locations of the heads of state of various countries. Li Mingze gave the order to a group of officers and left his seat. He wanted to go into the giant building to take a look. Your Majesty, can I go with you? Andrus suddenly stopped Li Mingze. She wanted to catch the culprits who killed her father and caused her to flee. Okay, come with me. Li Mingze thought for a moment and nodded. A few minutes later, an invisible beam on the Ark scanned the entire Mingze from top to bottom. The hologram of Mingze appeared in front of Li Mingze, who was walking towards the airdrop chamber. Your Majesty, based on the scan, we have analyzed the most likely location of these people, the 82nd underground floor of the Tower of Co-Prosperity. They have deployed a large number of troops from the first floor to the 81st underground floor, and all the troops on the entire planet have entered combat status. Qiu's voice appeared in Li Mingze's ears. Chapter 434 Father. A bunch of junk. Li Mingze curled his lips in disdain and pulled out a huge 30-centimeter-long hilt from his waist. He gently held the hilt in his hand, and a huge 2-meter-long light blade suddenly shot out from the top of the hilt. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of machine guns shooting came from all around Li Mingze, but at this time Li Mingze had already jumped into the air with one foot. As he jumped to the top of a mecha, the 2-meter-long light blade cut down along the center line of the mecha. After a burst of electric sound, the mecha was cut in half vertically, and a lot of blood spilled from the two halves. Li Mingze did not stop after the successful attack, and continued to rush to the next target. As he passed by one mecha after another, the beam energy blade in his hand cut all the passing mechas in half from the waist. Accompanied by the sound of blood spraying, the cut mechas all fell to the ground. Andres on the side was not to be outdone, and began to shuttle in the hail of machine gun bullets, and the submachine gun in his hand never stopped. Although Li Mingze and Andres had been hit by dozens of shells, these shells were just drizzle for Li Mingze and the others. After being hit, the two people only paused in their movements, and their bodies could not be hurt at all. A few minutes later, when the Empire's orbital airborne troops landed at the bottom of the deep pit, only the wreckage of the metro was left, and Li Mingze and Andres had disappeared. Throwing away the Alliance soldier whose neck had been strangled, Li Mingze patted his hands that were already covered in blood. This is why he chose black armor. The blood on it will not be so obvious after the blood oxidizes and turns black. Open the door, the express you want. Li Mingze and Andres came to the door of the last safe house in the Alliance headquarters, and as he knocked on the heavy alloy door, a series of dull sounds were made. I didn't expect that the super fortress we built for our own safety would become a prison that would trap us to death. If we disperse and hide, we should be able to hold out until the fleet arrives. The voice of the mysterious man on the space station came from the access control next to the alloy door. Andres, you are here too. I knew I would die in your hands, but I never expected that you would lead foreigners to invade our homeland. The mysterious man sighed and seemed a little unwilling. After a slight vibration, the alloy door in front of Li Mingze and Andres slowly opened to both sides, revealing a spacious hall behind the door. The hall was surrounded by fully armed soldiers, and in the middle of the hall was a round conference table. At this time, the conference table was surrounded by leaders of various civilizations in the asteroid sea. We lost, but please don't vent your anger on the soldiers around us. They are just following orders. The masked man sighed and glanced at the soldiers standing by the wall. We will never succumb to foreigners. Long live the Alliance, long live the motherland. Many soldiers raised their rifles, pointed them at their heads and pulled the trigger. After a burst of gunfire, there were only corpses on the ground around the hall. They were all good soldiers. What a pity. Li Mingze shook his head, but there was not much regret in his tone. It's time to let you know the truth of the matter. The masked man suddenly pressed the switch on the table, and the heavy alloy door closed again. What do you want to do? Drag us to be buried with you? Li Mingze narrowed his eyes and asked the masked man. No, no, no. In addition to our own safety, the other purpose of building this safe house was to avoid ubiquitous recorders. The masked man shook his head and reached out to take off the mask, revealing a half-burned horrible face. But Andres beside Li Mingze began to tremble after seeing this face. Father, Andres screamed. She couldn't believe it. Wasn't her father dead? You haven't been killed, Andres roared in disbelief. No, my child. It wasn't me who was killed, it was a recorder who pretended to be me. The man who took off the mask shook his head. Originally I just doubted the existence of our world, but until that day, when I developed a weapon that could break the endless meteorite wall of the asteroid sea, I felt that everything around me had changed. The man who put on the mask again suddenly had a sharp look in his eyes. Some unknown existence does not want us to leave the asteroid sea. They had already wanted to kill me when I proposed to form the Asteroid Sea Alliance. They knew that it was impossible for a single country to build a stellar cannon, but once the countries united, it would be different, because I have a good personal relationship with the heads of state of various countries in private. They are worried that we will form a united entity and break the cage of the asteroid sea. The masked man screamed loudly. One day when I was out, these people finally couldn't help but take action. They sent a clone that looked exactly like me, wanting to replace me so that stellar weapons would not appear in the world. So that the multinational alliance would not be formed. The masked man sighed. I went through a lot of hardships to escape from those people, but my face was completely disfigured in that attack. The unknown substance contained in this wound makes the wound impossible to heal. The masked man gently stroked his silver mask. That's why I wear a mask. After I escaped and ascended to heaven, I secretly united various countries and formed a secret multinational alliance. In order to prevent these observers from finding out, we built this safe house. The safe house made of various shielding materials can ensure that our meeting will never be leaked, and in this house, we planned the attack on the clones who replaced me. At the same time, the construction of stellar weapons was put on our agenda at this time. Since these recorders don't want us to leave the asteroid sea, then we must leave. After overcoming hundreds of sabotage and infiltration caused by observers, we successfully built a stellar energy stimulator. Using this stimulator, we opened up a route to the outside world, but we didn't expect that we would attract your Sith Empire. Alice, it's too late to regret. The masked man threw himself on the chair. Then the secret key in my hand is. Andrus didn't understand why the recorder who wanted to stop them from building a stellar energy stimulator gave her the secret key. The recorders thought I was dead. They were afraid that the Alliance would have no choice but to develop the program themselves, so they deliberately gave you the erroneous program that could self-destruct and secretly spread the news, but they didn't expect that I was not dead at all. After getting the code from your maid, we discovered the trick and killed your maid who had been replaced by the recorder. The masked man chuckled, expressing his disdain for the low IQ of these recorders. Chapter 435 Kill me with your own hands. Then why did you say those words when you met me in the star stimulator, and why did the troops chase me? Andrus continued to ask. Hey, after the star energy stimulator was activated, I felt guilty for the billions of people I killed, although most of them were people who committed crimes, and although they made sacrifices for everyone, I can't get over it in my heart. I keep irritating you so that you can accumulate enough anger. When necessary, I will come to you alone and give you a chance to kill me. I am guilty. I also killed your mother with my own hands, the masked man said, tears flowing from his eyes. Because your mother has been with the observer, although your mother didn't know, it was also a betrayal that I couldn't tolerate, so after killing the observer, I also killed your mother. Child, kill me with your own hands. The masked man stood up and walked in front of Andrus, and put the pistol on his waist into Andrus's hand. And you, invader, please don't abuse our people. Finally, I advise you to be wary of those observers. Ha. The masked man was a little crazy. After he saw Andrus holding the pistol and unable to kill him, he stepped forward decisively, stretched out his hand and held the pistol to his forehead. As his finger squeezed the trigger fiercely, the masked man's mask and head were shattered by the bullet of the pistol. Mingze, who had been silent, came to the main seat in front of the conference table and sat down. Everyone, if you tell me in detail what the recorder is, I can consider sparing your lives. Mingze put his legs on the table. As for Andrus, she was immersed in the collapse of her father's death at her gun. Let her calm down. No need to spare our lives. We were prepared when we established the alliance. We have seen through life. Our life is just a stage play in front of others, a national leader sighed depressedly. Recorders, they are everywhere. According to our secret research, they are the builders of this asteroid starfish cluster. As for us and all the people, we are just guinea pigs used by these people for some kind of experiment, another leader sneered. In order to maintain the stability of the experimental environment, they will eliminate all unstable factors. For example, Andre, who developed the stellar energy stimulator and planned to form an alliance. Another example is the generals, kings, and heads of state who wanted to unify the asteroid sea in history. They all suddenly gave up the struggle for hegemony at the peak of their lives and chose to retreat to their own territories. It is said that these people's temperaments have changed after giving up the struggle for hegemony. These coincidences and evidence all show that these unstable factors that want to change the observer's experimental environment have been eliminated. Unification is not allowed in the asteroid sea experimental field. Any country that may be unified will fail for various reasons, the leaders sighed. Later, with the help of Andre, we developed a device that can identify souls. This made it impossible for the recorders to infiltrate us, and it is also the reason why our alliance can exist. Now, we are free, and the trouble of the recorders will be solved by you invaders. After that, all the leaders also shot themselves. A sound of footsteps came, and the Imperial troops had passed through many obstacles and advanced to the safe house. But at this time, there were only corpses scattered all over the safe house, and the only one alive, Mingze. Andrus, your enemy is the recorder, and your father also committed suicide. Don't think about it anymore. Mingze walked up to Andrus, who was still standing there, and slapped her head hard. My enemy is the recorder. Andrus's eyes regained clarity. Clear this tower. The enemies outside should have surrendered, and prepared to receive their troops. Mingze ordered the soldiers who came in. At this time, the Alliance fleet was just about to arrive, but when they left the sublight speed, they suddenly received a surrender message from the headquarters. Their command had surrendered, and all fleets were ordered to disarm and wait for the Sith Empire to accept them. Although many officers and soldiers were somewhat reluctant, they still obediently turned off the weapons of the spacecraft and stopped in the air. At this point, the Empire completely controlled all the colonies and armies in the asteroid sea. The governments of the countries in the asteroid sea also ended their tens of thousands of years of rule over the asteroid sea after their leaders committed suicide. Mingze also put the recorder's matter first. The equipment used to identify whether the soul is the person's own began to be mass-produced, and all people will be bound to the soul ID. However, this method can only prevent the birth of new recorders, and the old recorders cannot be found. Therefore, all residents and ground troops in the asteroid sea were blocked in the asteroid sea and were not allowed to go out to prevent the spread of recorders. At this time, inside a meteorite half the size of the moon in the center of the asteroid sea has been unified by external forces. The experiment failed. The experimental data began to be uploaded to the science committee. All observers began to enter a latent state and must not be exposed before receiving new orders. A floating ball of light muttered to itself. As information was sent to the center of the Milky Way, the ball of light dimmed again. At this time, in the star fortress of the Supreme Scientific Committee of Humanity in the center of the Milky Way, the president who was in a meeting was suddenly interrupted by a message. Play the message. The president frowned and said to the intelligence. Report to the president. Our social experiment in the Orion Arm has failed. The experimental site was destroyed by an alien civilization, but the information from the past 20,000 years has been sent back intact. Should we send a fleet to this star region to check? Many wormhole transfer stations in this star region have also lost contact not long ago. An officer appeared in the center of the conference table. Approved investigation. I will allocate you 10 asteroid-class frigates. The president nodded gently. More than 20,000 years of data is enough for them. The purpose of this experimental site is to study what will happen if many civilizations with different ideologies are put together. At the same time, it can also study whether the development speed of civilization will be accelerated under intense competition, or whether it will be affected by the secret destruction of other civilizations. When they were dormant, this experimental site was handed over to an intelligent host. The task of this intelligent host is to use cloning technology to replace all unstable factors that affect the experiment until their staff takes over the laboratory. Chapter 436, First Time with the Science Committee. If Andre could hear these people's conversation, he would definitely know that their guess was not wrong. The asteroid sea is one of the experimental bases of these advanced civilizations, and they are just the guinea pigs used in this experiment. Tens of thousands of years ago, the science committee discovered this star cluster enclosed by asteroids during an accidental exploration. The researchers of the committee spread the seeds of mankind in various star systems in this star cluster. However, not long after spreading the seeds of civilization, the science committee withdrew all researchers and citizens in the Milky Way and hibernated. After obtaining the authorization of the chairman of the committee, Commander Javine led 10 asteroid-class frigates to fly in the direction of the asteroid sea. After passing through the high speed composed of dozens of wormhole channels and transfer stations, the fleet entered the star field where the transfer station lost contact. The 10 ships could only start normal hyperspace flight, and the abnormal fluctuations in hyperspace were also discovered by the detectors launched by the Empire to various places around the star field. After a shrill alarm, Mingze's consciousness came to the body of the capital of the Empire. What happened, Your Majesty? Our detectors detected abnormal hyperspace fluctuations. Based on the direction of this fluctuation, we calculated that they are flying to the asteroid sea. Tianyi's tone was a little panic. Based on her calculation of the speed of the movement of this hyperspace fluctuation, the other party's technology is far superior to that of the Empire. You know, with the development of technology, if you want to make a breakthrough in one technology, then other aspects of technology must also make progress. The same is true for hyperspace engines. Faster flight speeds mean that more powerful metals are needed to make engines, and at the same time, it also means stronger energy concentrations, and reactors that can produce so much energy. Such a strong reactor means that countless technologies need to be broken through. Therefore, The opponent's hyperspace navigation speed also determines the speed of the opponent's civilization development. The universe is not an environment like the asteroid sea that can be biased. How many warships can be mobilized in our empire's home star field? Li Mingze frowned. There are still 2 million Tiger Shark-class warships and 20 million alien warships left in our empire's homeland. Tianyi closed his eyes and counted the data. Send out all the alien fleets to intercept. I want to know who this fleet is. Li Mingze gritted his teeth. He already had a guess in his mind that this fleet was probably the civilization of the so-called Recorder. His move to unify the asteroid sea must have alarmed the civilization of the Recorder. It was entirely possible that the other party sent out a fleet for inspection. He didn't know that the reason for the other party's arrival was also the destruction of the wormhole transfer stations. A bunch of bad events piled up together was the reason for their coming. Yes, sir. The alien fleet has begun to mobilize. It is expected that they will be able to intercept the enemy when they reach the border outpost of the 5th hexagram of our star field. According to the 4 symbols and 8 trigrams, the plane coordinate system is called a quadrant. The 3-dimensional coordinate system in space is called a hexagram, and the hexagram containing the positive semi-axis of the x-axis, the positive semi-axis of the y-axis, and the positive semi-axis of the z-axis is called the first hexagram, which is above the zoi plane and is determined in a counterclockwise direction. The parts below the first, second, third, and fourth hexagrams are called the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th hexagrams respectively. Let me see who this fleet is, Li Mingze said solemnly, looking at the red dot that was constantly moving on a holographic screen in front of him. In a blink of an eye, a month had passed, and the alien fleet had assembled in the star system where the target would jump out of hyperspace next, waiting for it. The enemy is expected to arrive in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The enemy fleet has arrived. With the observer's roar, 10 5-kilometer-long silver spaceships appeared in the starry sky. A compass and a protractor logo was revealed on the side of the spacecraft, and the words Supreme Scientific Committee of Humanity were sprayed next to the logo. Does this Supreme Scientific Committee of Humanity fit the character of the Recorder who used the asteroid sea for experiments? Li Mingze became more and more certain that the Recorder was undoubtedly the civilization. However, he did not notice that the words Supreme Scientific Committee of Humanity were sprayed in Chinese characters. Excuse me. Before Li Mingze finished speaking and sent it out, the fleet on the opposite side suddenly shot out tens of thousands of crescent-shaped beams, cutting millions of alien warships into several sections. Damn it! Fight back immediately. Li Mingze did not expect that the other side would actually fight without declaring war, and he could not help but feel angry. The remaining more than 10 million alien warships began to disperse and rush towards the 10 spaceships. Acid bomb attack, firebone spur shells. Although the alien fleet kept attacking the 10 spaceships, the shields of the 10 spaceships only slightly rippled. It's impossible to break their shield. Li Mingze was a little dumbfounded. He didn't expect that the concentrated attack of tens of millions of alien warships could not break their shield. Your Majesty, the other side uses a special shield, which is specially designed for low-level civilizations. Any attack that does not reach the endurance limit of the other side's shield in an instant will not be damaged. On the contrary, if it reaches the strength, it only takes one hit to shatter the shield. We can also make this kind of shield, but the upper limit of the shield is much lower than the ordinary shield we are equipped with. This makes them very vulnerable when facing warships of the same level, but they are indestructible to low-level civilizations. Tianyi suddenly appeared and explained. We can also make it. Li Mingze couldn't believe it. How could he not know that the Empire had this technology? Because the technological level of the civilization we encountered is not much different from ours, this technology is not, Tianyi explained softly. Order the alien fleet to retreat and don't make unnecessary sacrifices. Li Mingze decisively issued the order to retreat. The alien fleet that was fighting suddenly turned around and retreated to the outer edge of the star system. After destroying millions of alien warships, the warships of the committee, which had just finished accumulating energy, seemed to feel that bullying the weak was really boring, so they stopped chasing and immediately entered hyperspace and disappeared into the universe. Li Mingze breathed a sigh of relief and could only withdraw the fleet deployed in the asteroid sea to the side and wait for the opportunity to attack. Before these warships arrived, he had to think of a way to deal with this fleet. At this time, on the 10 asteroid-class frigates, Commander Javin sent a message back to the committee headquarters. The reason for the loss of contact with the transfer station has been discovered. There is a group of large space creatures entrenched here, which may be a growing civilization. Chapter 437, The Arrest Plan of 100 Million People. The committee has received that the star region is being designated as a wild species protection zone. We will send a special scientific research station. A new wormhole transit station will also be put on the agenda. Our newly built transit station cannot be destroyed by these creatures. You continue to go to the test area, restore the test area, expel or eliminate the foreign forces, and recycle the observers. The committee headquarters was silent after sending the last message to the fleet. At this time, Mingze did not know that the alien fleet he sent was regarded as a wild animal by these people, otherwise he would have vomited blood. In the Imperial Royal Academy of Sciences, all the chief scientists gathered together. Mingze sat in the main seat in the center of the hall, and the scientists sat in several large circles around him. You all know the information about this fleet. This is the biggest crisis of our empire at present. We must find a way to break the shield of this fleet. Mingze looked around and slowly said to many scientists, Your Majesty, it is very simple to break this shield. It only takes one attack to reach the limit of its energy value, a scientist engaged in shield research actively proposed. What I'm discussing now is how to make the attack reach the upper limit of the shield's energy tolerance. Mingze sighed. Your Majesty, didn't the civilization in the asteroid sea build the most primitive version of the stellar energy stimulator? If we use this weapon, a scientist said cautiously. I know that, but it takes 3 billion lives to launch this thing once. I can't bear it. Besides, where can we find so many lives? Mingze shook his head firmly. He didn't want to stain the lives of so many innocent people on his hands. Your Majesty, that's the maximum power they use to open the asteroid channel. We don't need such a wide energy column. We only need a small beam of 10 centimeters in diameter to achieve the effect, the scientist who just spoke reminded. Once the power is reduced, we only need the souls of 10 million people to launch once. The scientist took out his personal terminal and kept clicking it to calculate the number of souls needed in the end. 10 million people. Mingze fell into deep thought. You know, there are no enemies now. All those who surrendered have been incorporated into the empire and become second-class citizens. Your Majesty, your hands should not be stained with blood. Let me do this. Moda, who has become the minister of the special department of the empire, stood up. As a non-existent department that helps His Majesty maintain the stability of the empire, it is reasonable for the emperor's right-hand man to be stained with blood. Okay, I approve your Ghost Department's second-level authority. Remember, only guilty people can be arrested. You don't need to report the arrest process to me. I just want to hear the result. Mingze pinched his eyebrows. Yes, sir. I will definitely not let your Majesty down. Moda stood up and saluted before turning away. The Ghost Department is a special department that does not exist in the establishment of the imperial government. All members of the department are from the transformed Sith warriors, the Imperial Royal Marines and the best elites in the police department. All members of the entire department have a specially forged second identity. And their activity funds are all from the seizure of daily tasks. The meaning of the existence of this department is to eliminate all hidden enemies for Mingze. With the help of Tianyi, anyone who wants to subvert the rule of the empire will be found by this department and made to disappear. Although the brainwashing technology of the empire is very mature and ubiquitous, there are always one or two people who think they are the protagonists and are not controlled by brainwashing. They want to overthrow the current highly centralized imperial government. His Majesty's latest order is to arrest at least 100 million criminals. These criminals are all selected from second and third level citizens. After returning to his office, Mata immediately called 10 main responsible persons. But we can't find so many criminals at all. Although the security in the star region that has just been incorporated into the empire is still very chaotic, but, a responsible person whispered. All residents in the newly incorporated asteroid star zone will have their memories read, and all those with any criminal records will be arrested. Well, those who have stolen 100 energy coins will be counted. Mod gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Even so, it is very difficult to find 100 million people in the asteroid star zone with a population of more than 100 billion, a responsible person secretly complained in his heart. You know, as technology becomes more advanced, the crime rate will drop sharply. It is impossible to commit a crime without being discovered in a city covered by surveillance everywhere. After entering the interstellar era, crime only exists in slums and some wilderness, and only impulsive crimes remain in cities. This, incorporate all new planets into the Prophet network, and we will catch some possible criminals in the future. Also, send a message to these planets that all monitoring equipment will be temporarily ineffective for a week due to network connection. Please abide by the law. Modus showed a sinister smile at the corner of his mouth. Minister, you are wise, the 10 responsible persons responded in unison. Soon, the elite agents of the Empire came to the Empire's new star zone, the asteroid star zone, through the consciousness descent device. All the elite soldiers in the local garrison were temporarily borrowed by these agents to perform special tasks. At the same time, the garrisons in various places that were maintaining the stability of the annexed areas also received a message from the Empire's Supreme Command, requiring all troops to unconditionally cooperate with the work of the special personnel, that is, the agents. A few hours later, all the monitoring equipment and satellites on all planets were incorporated into the Prophet system. The supercomputer began to deduce continuously in order to find out possible crimes in the future. And one by one, the agents and soldiers were ready to arrest those who might commit crimes. Dear citizens of the Empire, because the new planetary monitoring network will be connected to the Empire headquarters network, all monitoring will be temporarily suspended in 3 days for a week. All citizens, please consciously abide by the laws and regulations and do not commit any illegal acts. As the screens on the street began to play the video prepared by Moda, people looked up at the big screen. All citizens, please consciously abide by the laws and regulations and do not commit any illegal acts. Consciously, after hearing these meaningful words, some people showed an inexplicable light in their eyes. Under the seemingly peaceful colonies, undercurrents began to surge, and people with criminal tendencies in their bones began to stir. Chapter 438, The Great Purge on the Day of Innocence. With a burst of alarms, 5 masked men rushed into a jewelry store with ancient gunpowder rifles. After 2 days of secret observation, these people first tried to steal, but later found that there was no police chasing them. These people thought that the surveillance equipment was really out of use, so they wanted to take the opportunity to do something big. After finding 5 old-fashioned weapons, they launched a robbery on a nearby jewelry store. Don't move. Put all the jewelry in this bag. The 5 robbers swept through the crowd with rifles, scaring the crowd to scream. Cooperate with us obediently, we will leave after the robbery, the leading man among the robbers shouted loudly to the salesperson and customers behind the counter. A few minutes later, before the police arrived, the 5 robbers carried the jewelry and disappeared into the alley. Originally, based on their size and movements, the police could easily catch them, but after the surveillance temporarily stopped working, these streets and alleys were their world. The target has completed the robbery as predicted by the Prophet system, and no one was injured. The calculation accuracy is 96%. At this time, on the roof above the alley, an agent wrapped in black power armor and 2 orbital airborne soldiers were watching the robbers running in the alley. Notify the police to arrest them. We will go to the next target. A group of 30 robbers want to hijack a large shopping mall in 1 hour and 51 minutes. The figures of the agent and the airborne soldiers jumped and disappeared above the house. At this time, bursts of gunfire began to be heard from time to time in the cities of various colonies. People with criminal desires began to use their homemade weapons to do whatever they wanted in the city. But they didn't know that everything was seen by the surveillance camera. In front of a high-end shopping mall on the outskirts of the city, 5 suspended vans were parked in front of the mall's gate. 30 thugs holding homemade Gauss rifles rushed into the mall from the van. Everyone, get your electronic wallets ready, and your valuable jewelry. The thugs rushed into the mall while shooting at the ceiling. The thugs have already started committing crimes. The evidence is solid. The SWAT team is dispatched. An agent walked out from a dark corner of the mall. Then, 20 SWAT teams that had been lying in ambush on the rooftop rushed into the mall through the window. There was a sound of electricity, and all the thugs were knocked unconscious by high-voltage electric guns. All targets in the mall have been cleared, and a thief who stole jewelry was caught along the way. The SWAT commander connected the command center's communication. One by one, police cars began to circle and descend to the entrance of the mall. After knocking the van away, the rear door of the police car fell heavily. One by one, the criminals were dragged to the door and thrown into the police car. Although the means were rough, no criminal could wake up. By the time these criminals woke up, they should have appeared on the transport ship sent to the Stellar Energy Excitation device. Minister, as you expected, on the 3rd day after we announced the closure of the monitoring system, The number of crimes began to rise exponentially. People whose criminal psychology was suppressed before finally couldn't bear it anymore after the monitoring failed. Now the crime rate in the asteroid C colony has reached 0.1%, according to the Prophet System's analysis of these people's previous experiences and recent dynamics. The crime rate will rise further in the future. On the last day, the crime rate will reach its peak. In the asteroid C star area with a total population of 180 billion, we can capture a total of 230 million criminals. This is because the population far away from the city is relatively stable, otherwise the number of people captured will be even greater. A person in charge told Mode about the situation in the past few days bit by bit. Very good, it has far exceeded the maximum population needed by the Empire. After this great purge, the remaining people will be selected conscientious people. In the next 20 years, the crime rate in our empire will be reduced to an astonishing number. Mode nodded with satisfaction. This profit system is so powerful that even if you make a crime plan a year in advance, the system can still figure out when and how you plan to commit a crime based on your usual abnormal behavior. With this system, criminals in the empire will have nowhere to hide, not to mention those traitors who want to overthrow the empire's rule. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 7 crazy days, more than 230 million people were arrested, and many people found that their neighbors and friends had disappeared. In these 7 days, only 13 people died, and all the others were rescued by the police in time because of the prediction of the profit system. These 13 people were because of the miscalculation of the profit system, but such a low error rate has greatly surprised the scientists who designed this system. The empire can be said to have mastered the future of everyone in its country. Anything that may happen cannot escape the eyes of the ghosts. Dear citizens, after these 7 days of darkness, we have finally ushered in a brighter future. During these 7 days, all lawbreakers have been brought to justice. The unstable factors around you have been completely resolved. I hope that all the citizens who have been screened will abide by the law and stop committing any illegal and criminal acts. The holographic projections on the high-rise buildings of all colonial cities of the Imperial Police Department began to play this message in a continuous loop. Only then did people understand why it took 7 days to merge the surveillance network into the Imperial network. And why did those who engaged in criminal activities disappear during these 7 days? The day at the end of these 7 days also became a Memorial Day. Historians tens of thousands of years later called it a Day of Innocence. 5 days later, the last transport ship carrying criminals arrived at the Stellar Energy Stimulator. The transformation work on the Stellar Energy Stimulator has also come to an end. With the support of scientists and materials from all over the Empire, the Stellar Energy Stimulator has been pushed half the distance to the star, and the launch hole has been reduced to a diameter of only 10 centimeters. At this time, 10 frigates from the Supreme Science Committee have also arrived overseas of the asteroid. Start the scanning device and find the hole in the asteroid C, Commander Javian ordered the soldiers on the flagship of the committee fleet. After a few minutes of scanning, a small hole located at the bottom of the asteroid C was scanned by the scanning device. Huh? Why didn't you find any signs of technological civilization? The officer found that there were no warships or buildings around the large hole. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439 Energy Deflection Armor. The people on the committee didn't know that Mingze had already withdrawn the main fleet back to the Empire's homeland, and the wormhole high-speed channel generators along the way were shut down, dismantled into parts and buried. The Empire only had 2 million Tiger Shark-class battleships and captured multinational alliance battleships left in the entire asteroid sea. If any problem occurs, the Empire's homeland can still have the ability to fight again. However, the best-case scenario is that the Empire will use the Star Cannon to reduce these 10 battleships to ashes, but the enemy's large forces that may arrive later may become the Empire's nightmare. Or this small fleet will defeat the Empire's fleet left in the asteroid sea, restore the environment and pattern in the asteroid sea to its original state, and these recorders will ignore their existence and return to their hometown. The worst-case scenario is that the Empire will be completely destroyed by these 10 frigates without even seeing the shadow of the follow-up fleet. After the 10 committee ships completed the scan, they swaggered into the new route channel. They believed that it was almost impossible for a civilization in the Milky Way to break their shield, and the probability of an alien civilization appearing was too small, so they had no scruples. Your Majesty, the enemy has entered the passage. Should we open fire? Moda came to Li Mingze and bowed his head waiting for his order. No, the distance is too far now. It is very likely that these spacecraft will dodge. Li Mingze shook his head. Now is definitely not the time to take action. Yes, Your Majesty. Moda bowed his head and retreated. 8 days later, the committee warship finally sailed out of the new route. From a distance, they saw the star energy stimulator floating on the star orbit. Oh? Is this the weapon used by those experimental subjects to penetrate the asteroid sea barrier? It looks really backward. Commission Fleet Commander Javian curled his lips in disdain. Monkeys are monkeys. They can never be stronger than their creators. Secondary guns ready. After destroying the space station, we will restore this experimental area to its original state. Javian waved his hand, and the secondary guns on the 10 frigates began to turn their muzzles. Fire. Seeing that the enemy had entered the extremely difficult to avoid range, Li Mingze decisively gave the order. As the criminals screamed, souls were stripped from their bodies and pumped into containers with special magnetic fields. Flames began to rise from the star and rush towards the huge hole in the center of the star energy stimulator. The stimulator is working normally, and the working power has stabilized. A thin red beam rushed towards the committee fleet from the small hole in front of the stimulator space station. But what Li Mingze and a group of scientists couldn't believe was that the shields of the 10 frigates were actually combined into one. After the shields were combined, the upper limit of the energy that the new fleet shield could withstand was greatly increased, which had exceeded the maximum value calculated by the Empire. Increase the power. Put all the souls of the criminals in. The power reducer in front is also starting to be unsealed. Moda gritted his teeth as he looked at the unscathed committee fleet. In an instant, the souls of the remaining 220 million people were instantly stripped away. And the flames rising from the star suddenly increased. At the same time, the caliber of the energy stimulator began to increase continuously, gradually increasing to a diameter of half a meter. At this time, the beam of light that rushed out had turned into a beam of light. The shield of the committee fleet turned into a sky full of light in the midst of Javian's incredulous voice. I didn't expect these little monkeys to have another trick. Javian showed a playful expression. Do these people naively think that their warships only have this layer of protection? Don't fire, let them attack. Javian waved his hand at the soldiers who were about to fire back. The red beam of light from the stellar energy catalytic device shattered the shield of the committee fleet and hit the leading warship directly. However, what shocked Li Mingze and others was that the energy column slid around after hitting the warship armor. The warship that was hit was also unscathed. Energy deflection armor, you monkeys have never seen it. 99% of energy weapons are immune. Ha ha ha, Javian said to himself with a mocking look on his face. At this time, Li Mingze angrily smashed the console. Such a powerful energy was actually useless against this warship. What chance did they have of winning? Li Mingze sat back in his chair and began to wait for the enemy's attack. In the bridge of the Commission Fleet's flagship, when Javian's finger was only 1 millimeter away from the weapon launch button, a sharp ring suddenly rang in the bridge. Highest level communication. What happened? Javian raised his arm and looked at the communications officer. Sir, the highest level communication from the Commission has been connected to the main screen. The soldier pointed to the holographic screen in the center of the bridge with his eyes. Major Javian, stop all tasks at hand and lead your fleet back to the Commission. No need to have questions. This is the highest level alarm. A woman in a white uniform on the screen held back what Javian was about to ask. Yes. The fleet will return immediately. Javian glanced at the star energy stimulator not far away and continued to press the button. 10 crescent-shaped beams shot towards the space station in the star orbit. Let's retreat. Good luck to these guys. We will settle accounts with them later. Javian pointed at the star map, and 10 warships immediately entered sublight speed and began to fly to the outside of the asteroid ocean. Li Mingze, whose cloned body was destroyed along with the stellar energy stimulator, regained consciousness in the palace. Tianyi, what's the situation in the asteroid belt? As soon as he woke up, he hurriedly called Tianyi to find out the situation. Your Majesty, the enemy's fleet has retreated, and we have lost a stellar energy stimulator. Tianyi appeared beside Li Mingze with a smile on his face. Oh? What's the situation? Li Mingze was confused. Why did the enemy's fleet retreat like this? I don't know the reason, but it's a good thing, isn't it? Tianyi smiled sweetly. In an unexplored star field thousands of light years away from the starting star system, several star systems burst into dazzling light. If there are spacecraft approaching these star systems, they will find that the stars and planets of these star systems have all been shattered and turned into small fragments floating in the universe. And mixed in these fragments are the broken wreckage of spacecraft. These broken wreckages all express the fierce battle situation of these star systems a few days ago. Among these wreckages, there would occasionally be a purple figure passing by, attaching some wreckage to the hull. Chapter 445 Years passed. Have the coordinates been determined? In the meeting room of the Science Committee's Star Fortress, the president was sitting in the main seat of the meeting room with a serious expression, looking around at a group of senior officers. An officer looked at the information on the terminal in his hand and replied, "Yes, President, the coordinates of this natural disaster have been determined. This natural disaster is a level 3, an invasion of alien space creatures. The threat level is medium." A holographic image of the Milky Way suddenly appeared in the middle of the meeting room, and on one of the arms, a star region was dyed with a dazzling purple. This is the enemy area detected by our sensors. After hiding for decades, they are finally willing to expose themselves to the light of the stars. The officer magnified this star region to the limit. Send a fleet immediately to eliminate all these alien races, so that we can continue to sleep and wait for the arrival of our committee's true master, the president ordered the officers sitting there. President, does the true master of our committee really exist? An officer asked cautiously. Don't question the wisdom of the great ancestor. As early as the beginning of our committee, it was established to return to the embrace of the master. The ancestor said that if we can't take his ashes back home, we can only be regarded as wandering in the universe. We have been sleeping for dozens of rounds just for this day. The return time calculated by the ancestor is getting closer and closer. Anyone who hinders the committee from returning to the embrace of the master is our enemy. We can exist in this world and stand on the top of the galaxy. It's all given by the master. The president's expression became a little ferocious, and he looked at the officers around him fiercely. Could it be that the master of our committee is a four-dimensional civilization? Several officers discussed in a low voice. After all, the powerful civilization that can let them rule the Milky Way for hundreds of thousands of years is definitely not an ordinary civilization. I don't know, let's not discuss it. If the artificial intelligence hears it, it will report it to the president. Another officer shook his head gently. A few days later, the assembled committee fleet began to fly towards the detected coordinates of the natural disaster. At this time, in the star field where the natural disaster is located, new wars are constantly breaking out. Star region where the scourge is located 1 month ago. The Davis Expansion Committee suffered heavy losses in the battle with the Sith Empire and the mechanical civilization. Then, under the pursuit of the Davis Security Council, its disadvantage gradually expanded, and it was finally forced to the last planet under their control. Under the huge internal pressure, all members of the Davis Expansion Committee finally chose to surrender. After decades of civil war, the Davis Security Council finally ushered in unification. The Davis Security Council, which regained power, began to free up its hands to rebuild the territory that was shattered by the Civil War. Unexpectedly, at this time, the anti-saint civilization, which had been hidden in the dark for a long time, came out of the dark void of the Milky Way. After the Pilgrim civilization, the anti-saints hid and developed secretly. After confirming that their fleet was strong enough, the anti-saints prepared to invade this new universe. But on the third day after they came out of the void, they encountered the patrolling warships of the Davis Security Council. Needless to say, the anti-saints, who saw the warships as if they saw food, launched a surprise attack on the small patrol team. The entire patrol fleet was wiped out by this group of anti-saints. The angry Davis Security Council would naturally not let go of these shameless enemies who attacked their fleet. The war between the two sides was imminent. However, this battle seemed to have nothing to do with the Empire in the distance. The Sith Empire has re-entered a stable development period. Mingze was also able to take time to study the time machine. For the fleet of the Science Committee that suddenly appeared, there was no way except to wait passively. This fleet lost its trace after leaving the asteroid sea. He didn't know when they would come again, or never appear again. At this time, it became particularly important to be able to communicate with the future. If you can foresee the future instead of passively receiving messages from the future, then the Empire will become invincible. 5 years have passed. During these 5 years, the Empire has undergone many changes. First of all, the Empire opened up the market for small civilian spacecraft, allowing civilian companies to manufacture and sell small civilian spacecraft, and shipborne light weapons also began to be authorized to private companies. At the same time, light power armor and beam energy weapons were also open to private enterprises. With this favorable wind, not only the economy of the Empire could grow slightly, but ordinary people also had basic equipment for self-protection. Once a biological weapon like the alien released by the Empire breaks out, ordinary civilians will not sit idly by. Not only that, in order to ensure that civilians will not lose out in battle, all citizens of the Empire, regardless of first, second, or third class, regardless of gender, age, or youth, must undergo military training for 1 month every year. At that time, any civilization that dares to invade the Empire will experience the taste of people's war. However, the long-range weapons and heavy weapons of individual soldiers are still blocked from civilians, because once there are rebels who want to overthrow the regime, Mingze does not want soldiers to face the muzzle of guns. Not to mention, it is necessary to prevent ordinary crimes from turning into gun crimes, and society will become dangerous. In 5 years, the Empire's second time space shuttle was also built. This experimental machine number 002 was built in a desolate star system, far away from the Empire's homeland. The power of this test machine is several times stronger than the first generation. With a successful experience of the first generation, the diameter of the metal ball transmitted by this test machine has reached 30 centimeters. This metal ball is no longer a solid metal sphere, but is embedded with a micro-reactor that can support 1,000 years and a large capacity memory crystal. This crystal will record what it has experienced through the 6 ultrasonic sensors on the metal ball. As a price, the volume of this generation of time space shuttle is also larger, covering an area of 30 square kilometers, not to mention the energy extraction device at the center of the gaseous planet below the shuttle. In the laboratory where the number 002 test machine is located, Mingze and the scientists stood around the metal ball. Can this experiment determine the time or place where the metal ball will go? Mingze held the metal ball in his hands with gloves. No, Your Majesty, but we can roughly determine which time node it will go to when it passes through the time wormhole, but we can't guarantee success, because the time for space leakage is very short. Let's do our best and leave it to fate. The scientist shook his head. Does anyone remember the pitfall of the Supreme Scientific Committee of Humanity? This is a pit that has existed from the beginning to the end, and it will be filled in the end. Chapter 441 The Third Message from the Future. Mingze nodded with satisfaction. It's good that the time can be determined. Let's start the experiment, soon. The group evacuated to the experimental ship away from the experimental base where the time space shuttle was located. The second time space shuttle experiment is about to begin. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start. As the countdown ended, Mingze saw through the camera that the metal sphere disappeared in a dazzling white light. Have you detected the time point where the metal ball went? Mingze hurriedly asked the researcher next to him. It has been detected. The metal ball went to the world 100 years later. The error is no more than 50 years, the researcher replied excitedly. Mingze on the side was very upset. There was only 100 years in total, and there was an error of 50 years. Your Majesty, please sit down and rest for a while. I don't know how long the metal ball will disappear this time, a scientist next to him said while pushing a floating chair behind Mingze. As soon as he finished speaking, a shock wave suddenly tore the atmosphere of the experimental space station and the gaseous planet below the space station. Even the experimental ship that was hiding far away was slightly affected and began to shake slightly. The lights in the warship kept flickering. Send out drones to recover the metal ball. Our treasure is back. 10 drones broke away from the experimental ship and flew towards the metal ball that appeared with a shock wave. Through the camera lens of the drone, everyone in the experimental ship could clearly see that the surface of the metal ball was still smooth. A few hours later, the recovered metal ball was sent to a separate isolated experimental ship. A group of scientists entered the experimental ship through their consciousness descending on the clone. The surface of this metal ball has not been damaged. Now we will open it and see what the crystal inside has recorded, a scientist said as he opened a high-energy cutter in his hand, and a blue flame sprayed out from the cutter nozzle. As this special cutter slowly cut on the metal ball was carefully cut into 2 halves. But many scientists were shocked when they saw what was inside the ball. Your Majesty, please cut off the connection with your consciousness. There may be danger here, the chief scientist shouted at Li Mingze. Li Mingze subconsciously cut off the connection with this body and returned to the palace. What happened? After returning to the palace, Li Mingze immediately connected to the communication of the experimental ship. Your Majesty, the equipment inside the metal sphere we sent over has been replaced. Look, the chief scientist aimed the camera at the inside of the cut metal sphere. Our original detectors and memory crystals have all been taken away. We cannot determine the function of the equipment that replaced it. What appeared in the camera was a sphere of unknown material composed of countless hexagons with a flashing blue light. Our experimental ship has begun to move away from the mainland of the Empire. We will not return before we determine the function of this metal sphere. Everything is for the Empire. Long live your Majesty. The scientists in the experimental ship saluted the camera. Suddenly, the light on the metal sphere began to flicker continuously, and finally turned green. Language detected, Chinese. Keyword detected, Empire. Keyword detected, Your Majesty, the security lock has been opened. Please hand over this sphere to your Supreme Leader, His Majesty Li Mingze. The highest execution code is 003AA1. After the metal sphere broadcast a few messages, it fell into silence again. Search this code now. The chief scientist felt that this code was unusually familiar. Teacher, this code is the highest level of security code within our empire. According to the description of the code, we should obey this order unconditionally. A scientist who quickly searched on the terminal showed an expression of disbelief on his face. Li Mingze on the other end of the camera was also stunned. What's going on? Could this sphere be made by the Empire? Gritting his teeth, Li Mingze decided to take a risk and soon connected to the clone in the experimental ship. You go out first, let me and the metal sphere have a private contact. Considering that it is likely to be a message sent back from the future, Li Mingze waved his hand to drive all the scientists out. Even if there is danger, these scientists will not be able to play any role. Scanning, the soul ID has been confirmed. It is His Majesty Li Mingze himself. All information begins to unlock. A holographic screen suddenly appeared in front of Li Mingze. Hello, my old self. You guessed it right. I am you in 150 years. I have waited for 150 years to wait for today. What I am going to tell you next is very, very important. You can't tell anyone about what's going to happen next, except Tianyi. A face that looks exactly like Li Mingze suddenly appeared on the holographic screen. Okay, I won't tell anyone. Li Mingze nodded and pressed the switch on his belt, and a shielding field appeared around him and the metal ball. 150 years ago, on the day you see me now, I received a message from myself 150 years later. This made me understand that time is a closed loop, but there are exceptions. Do you think I am you 150 years later? No, I am and I am not. After the construction of the space-time shuttle was completed, I began to immerse myself in the research of the space-time machine, until I figured out a problem. That is, if we had not received a warning message from the future in the past, would we have been destroyed? And after we receive the warning message from the future, we can prepare in advance and nip possible disasters in the bud on the bud. But the question is, if we don't perish, then who will send warning messages to the past? Without the warning message, we will still be destroyed, but at the same time, we will send warning messages to the past to avoid our destruction. This has formed a kind of refutation. Li Mingze from the future paused and continued to explain regardless of the confused Li Mingze. So, after continuous research, I discovered the true secret of time and space. We have always been on a timeline in this universe, but when we received a message from the future, the timeline was changed. A new parallel universe separated from the original universe. The history of the two universes is the same, but the future is completely different. Chapter 442 Explorers Guild. That is to say, with the technology we can understand, we will never be able to get the future information of this universe. I am the future you from the parallel universe, and what separated my universe from your universe was that we would receive another message in 20 years. This message changed the future and created a me in the parallel world. I call it the time-space anchor point. Every time a time-space anchor point appears, it represents the birth of a new universe, and according to my speculation, if every time we receive a future message, the universe will split, then the number of parallel universes now should not be a small number. This also means that we know that there are as many as 23 universes with imperial civilization. The future Li Mingze suddenly became serious. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that after my research, I found that the 3 future messages we received when the man and the ship were united were not sent by ourselves. As the future self said this shocking secret, Mingze opened his mouth in shock. Yes, I have never understood why it is possible to send messages back to the past just before the Empire is about to be destroyed. Besides, before we studied the time-space machine, we did not know how much it would cost to transmit to precise coordinates in time. It was not until we started to study this technology that I realized that the resources needed to transmit messages to us so punctually and on time were impossible for the empire that was about to be defeated to sustain. Besides, if there were no messages from the future, we would never think of studying time-space technology, and the formation of time-space technology could not be completed in the short time when the empire was about to be defeated. What's more, since we already know that this is sending an alarm to the parallel universe, why should we spend resources that can be used to escape to warn other universes that may not be hit by disasters? You will not be able to receive messages from the future in 20 years, that is to say, these messages are pseudo-time-space anchors created by a certain civilization. This civilization separates the future that is not under their control from this universe by constantly creating false time-space anchors, making the future controllable, and this civilization must exist in the main sequence time and space, and is about to go to war with the Empire. This civilization, I initially estimate that it is the Zerg recorded by the previous generation of civilization. They have begun to return to the Milky Way. Mingze in the future side. Zerg? Then why are there Zerg coordinates in the first message sent back? I understand. Could it be that the coordinates are fake? Lure the tiger away from the mountain. Mingze was shocked. I'm just guessing, I can't be sure. Mingze in the future shrugged. By the way, the one talking to you is the artificial intelligence I asked Tianyi to create. It stores the new technology that our empire has developed in the past 150 years. Although it has entered a bottleneck period and the progress of technology is very slow, it should still be very helpful to you. The figure of Mingze in the future changed into little lolly. Tianyi, this little lolly you created is handed over to you. Integrate all the technology into the existing technology tree as soon as possible. Mingze shouted to the air, and Tianyi's figure appeared in front of him. After explaining some information to Tianyi, Mingze returned to his office. Now he is very entangled, whether the information about the Zerg is true or false. If what he said in the future was true, then he would undoubtedly waste an arc by deploying it on the other side of the Milky Way. And if he did not believe his own guess in the future, if the Zerg really used the strategy of luring the tiger away from the mountain, then there is no doubt that the Zerg will get supplies to restore its strength. No, I can't sit and wait for death, I must take precautions before it happens. Mingze stood up from the chair and walked out of the room. The Empire will have a brand new plan next. A month later, Tianyi has integrated all the new technologies into the Empire's technology tree. Scientists also stopped research and began to learn these knowledge from 150 years later. The battleships that the Empire had just updated became outdated overnight. The performance of the battleships built according to the new technology will be 70% stronger than the current battleships. The current battleships have undoubtedly become useless. Not only do they require a lot of resources to maintain, but they also consume a lot of energy. The number of people required to drive these backward battleships is not a small number. Although half of them are new battleships that integrate man and ship, the remaining battleships still require too many people. If these warships were upgraded from propulsion to armor, the facilities occupied and the resources consumed would be worse than building a brand new warship. Mingze had no choice but to build a brand new warship and seal up an old warship. With the new warships joining the army, the old warships will be sealed up underground on the planet, waiting for the day when they may be needed. Your Majesty, I have a good idea, Tianyi suddenly said. Oh? What good idea? Mingze turned his head and looked at Tianyi behind him. Why don't we set up an exploration guild to let those people who have nothing to do at home make use of their spare energy? We can sell or lease the frigates and destroyers that have no ceiling value to those explorers. These explorers can use these warships to head towards the surrounding star systems, Tianyi whispered. Not bad, good idea. Mingze clapped his hands excitedly. A few days later, all the citizens of the Empire knew that the Empire had established a new civilian organization, the Explorers Union. Any citizen can become an explorer after receiving a short 2-month training. Explorers can choose to join an official expedition team or a private expedition team, renting these retired warships of the Empire to explore the stars. According to the new regulations, after the explorers discover a new resource planet and clear the obstacles on the planet, all participating explorers will get 1% of the shares of the planet, 1% for all people. These explorers can consider selling the detailed information of the planet to private enterprises for development. The Empire will unconditionally own 51% of the shares. Or give the planet information to the Empire, and the Empire will develop it according to the distance and give a large bonus. As soon as the news came out, the people were boiling. The class of the Empire has long been solidified. If you want to break through the class, you must have some special skills, and ordinary people like them who have no special skills have no chance to make progress. Chapter 443 Explorer Li Mingze. But now it is different. With the emergence of the Explorers Guild, they have the opportunity to get rich overnight. They only need to find a planet with a large number of rare minerals to get 1% of the shares of this planet. What a tempting condition. This is 1% of the shares of a planet. Although they have hundreds of people on a spaceship, there will be a lot left over if they are evenly distributed, enough to make them the best. So, a large number of people who are idle at home began to sign up. Although the Empire has put the high risk of various disasters that may be encountered on the surface, it still cannot stop the continuous signing of people. In order to prevent the scientists of the Empire from being tempted and feeling unfair, Li Mingze decided that all scientists serving the Empire will unconditionally obtain 2% of the shares of all newly discovered planets. This undoubtedly greatly motivated the scientists of the Empire. Although there are a lot of scientists in the Empire, as new planets are constantly discovered, they will be able to get more and more shares. And this kind of welfare that can make money while sitting undoubtedly makes scientists full of passion for work, and their loyalty to the Empire is also constantly rising. 3 months later, the first group of explorers who had completed the training boarded their respective spacecrafts and began to fly to the countless star systems around the Empire. These star systems may be full of risks or opportunities, and these young people will usher in their brand new tomorrow. With these idle adventurers, the star regions that our Empire has explored will continue to expand. Not only that, they will also clear all threatening creatures on star systems and planets for our construction troops. This will also save us a lot of resources and pass the cost on to the people. Your Majesty is really wise. Tianyi came to Li Mingze, who was standing in front of the French window in the lobby on the second floor of the Explorer headquarters. You don't see the essence of the problem. As these explorers experience more and more things, we will be able to gain a large number of experienced crew members when the war comes. Moreover, they will also serve as an early warning for us. Once a civilization approaches us quietly, we will be alert as long as one explorer warship is killed. Let's toast to these lovely explorers. Li Mingze raised the wine glass in his hand and gently raised the glass to the explorers outside the French window and drank it all. In a spaceport newly allocated by the Empire to the Explorers Guild, the second batch of frigates formed an expeditionary force ready to go. The 800-meter-long ship was filled with 30 large-scale mining, combat and maintenance mechas and 100 drones. All the printing and manufacturing equipment related to the Empire's top secrets were removed and replaced with ordinary manufacturing equipment bought from EVA. At the same time, all the maps and information about the interior of the Empire's star field have been deleted. After any spacecraft encounters an accident, the remaining technology and information will not expose the current Empire's trump card. Even the individual armor and weapons equipped by the explorers are 2 generations ago and have been eliminated by the Empire for a long time. However, these explorers don't care. After the threatening civilizations around the Empire have been cleared, no powerful civilizations have been exposed in the known area. This means that as long as they are within the observation range of the Empire's detectors, they will not encounter civilizations of too high a level. They only have to deal with some primitive creatures or low-level civilizations that have not yet left the star system. I hope you can return with glory, rather than disappearing in the sea of stars. If you die during the exploration, the profits from your team's next successful exploration will be left as an inheritance to your loved ones, so I also advise those who have evil intentions to give up. Don't think about increasing the dividend ratio by harming your teammates. That's impossible. Okay, brave boys and girls, let's go. As Adrian, the chairman of the Explorers Guild, waved his hand, the young men and women who had been ready for a long time rushed towards the spaceships of their respective groups, and cheers came from the port. Adrian shook his head, really not knowing how many of these little guys could survive. He envied these young people a little. which reminded him of when he had just become the commander of the Empire's Inburchi Associate Army. After following the Great Majesty Li Mingze for decades, he had regarded himself as a true imperial citizen, and he also obtained the highest level of citizenship in the Empire. Due to his outstanding performance in many battles, the Empire handed over the Explorers Guild to him for management based on his various contributions to the Empire. Adrian, who was in a daze, did not notice that a young man who looked very similar to the Emperor boarded a frigate in the crowd. If this young man combed his side bangs and grew a beard, everyone would exclaim, "Isn't this the Emperor?" Yes, this young man is the clone stand-in of Li Mingze who has nothing to do. When the Empire got back on track and tens of millions of detectors used to find the traces of the Zerg were launched into the starry sky, Li Mingze suddenly found that he had nothing to do. With the assistance of the shrewd and capable harem group and the supercomputing power of Tianyi, all the complicated affairs of the Empire had been solved by Qiyu and others before they reached him. Li Mingze, who had nothing to do, decided to join an explorer team and follow these young people to the unknown deep space. Anyway, he no longer needs sleep, and he can return to the Empire's main body every day during the rest time of his body. "Hello, my name is Stova, what's your name?" A girl of mixed Russian and Chinese descent walked up to Li Mingze and stretched out her hand. "My name is Li Yiming, and I'm glad to be in the same team." Li Mingze smiled and stretched out his hand to hold it. Although this mixed-blood girl is quite good-looking, Li Mingze no longer has the mind to hunt for beauty. Now there are many pressures on him, and he doesn't want to be entangled in emotions when he comes out to relax. "Hey, Yiming, my name is Stova, I'm Stova's brother, nice to meet you." A big man who is also a mixed blood came forward and hugged Li Mingze. "Everyone, stop making trouble. If I remember correctly, the captain of our Stonewall expedition team is Mr. Li Yiming." A young man wearing a mechanical eye came forward. The one with SSS grades in all subjects. Everyone showed an expression of disbelief. Chapter 444, Backward Civilization During World War II. "It's just a coincidence," Li Mingze waved his hand hurriedly. "You are too modest. Let's go, let's get on the spaceship." The others must be waiting anxiously. Stowa pulled Li Mingze's arm and entered the spaceship. At this time, the 400 explorers in the spaceship had all arrived and all entered their own positions. After being influenced by the fantasy game, these young people who usually play games at home have already become familiar with the spaceship. In addition to the 3-month high-intensity training and accelerated training of consciousness diving into the machine, these people have basically acquired the skills that a crew member should have. The level division in the exploration ship is also based on the level of each exam. Li Mingze, who is SSS level in all subjects, is naturally the captain of this exploration ship, and the few people who were with him just now are also the spaceship management with excellent grades in various subjects. The universe is extremely dangerous. Those who can master various combat methods, distress handling, and maintenance skills are well-deserved spaceship leaders. In the future, explorers will need the leadership of these people when exploring the universe. Dear crew members, I am very happy to lead you to the depths of the universe. I will not say anything polite. I will just say one thing here. Li Mingze paused and continued, "Follow me well, I promise that you will be able to make a fortune. Make a fortune. Become a superior person." Li Mingze picked up the intercom next to the command seat and broadcast to the entire ship. Hearing Li Mingze's brief and rough inaugural speech, the young people on the ship cheered. "It seems that I am not old yet." Li Mingze smiled and shook his head. "Let's go. Target G4235, D3142, B8848, L7784, enter the jump." Li Mingze waved his hand at the front of the spacecraft, and the exploration ship jumped into the hyperspace in a flash of lightning. After a month of boring flight, the Stonewall exploration ship led by Li Mingze finally flew out of the star field that the Empire's deep space exploration ship had explored. The starry sky in front of them was a brand new world that the Empire's spacecraft had never set foot on, full of dangers and opportunities. All weapons are fully fired. Next, we will lose the support of the Empire network and cannot enter the interstellar network. We can only communicate with the Explorer headquarters in 2 directions. Begin the most basic scan of the star system. Li Mingze pointed to several planets in the hologram. The exploration ship began to slowly accelerate and flew towards the nearest planet. This is a blue ocean planet. There is no continent on the entire planet, and the possibility of the birth of advanced life is very low. As the exploration ship flew into the orbit of this planet, drones began to detach from the exploration ship and fly close to the atmosphere. Soon, the seabed structure map of the entire planet was made into a holographic image and slowly appeared on the holographic screen in front of everyone. Our drones have not found any signs of life yet, and no mineral veins with mining value have been found on this planet. Stover shook his head and turned off the detector. Order the drone to extract a liquid sample and return. Mingze nodded, but out of rigor, he still planned to collect some samples for analysis. A drone flying on the sea suddenly hovered in the air after receiving the order, and its altitude began to drop continuously. When the drone landed only 10 centimeters away from the calm sea surface, a mechanical arm stretched out from the bottom of the drone and extracted a drop of sample from the sea. The composition analysis shows that this ocean has a high concentration of toxins and is not suitable for the birth of life. This is a worthless garbage planet, Stover sighed, and several days of hard work were wasted. Continue to the next planet, Mingze also sighed. He didn't expect that being an explorer would be so boring. A few days later, the Stonewall expedition team, who found that the entire star system was a garbage planet, had no choice but to enter the hyperspace. Everyone, don't be discouraged. We can't succeed as soon as we come out. We still have a long way to go. Looking at the somewhat discouraged people, Mingze patiently comforted them. In fact, he didn't want to stay here any longer. There was no fun in the palace here. He could only watch the stored TV series every day. A few days later, the spacecraft jumped out of the hyperspace again. We received a weak electromagnetic wave signal. These electromagnetic wave signals come from the Earth-like planet in front of us. Stover's surprised voice suddenly sounded in the dull atmosphere of the bridge. Oh? Quick. Let's go and have a look. The sleepy Mingze woke up with a start. So far, the Empire has only encountered a primitive civilization in the Iron Age, and he has not encountered a civilization that can emit electromagnetic waves. Yes, sir. The driver carried with the electronic eye controlled the exploration ship and began to carefully approach the planet that was constantly radiating electromagnetic waves. No man-made objects were found in the orbit. Start launching drones. Stower stretched out her hand and tapped on the keyboard twice, and 2 drones flew towards the planet from the exploration ship. At this time, on this planet, the soldiers who were observing the starry sky suddenly found 2 fireballs falling from the sky, and they were shocked. The new missiles of land country are coming. Sound the air defense alarm. The soldier who found the fireball shouted to his comrades downstairs. Soon, the shrill air defense alarm rang throughout the town, and the people in the town fled into the air raid shelters dug by each family. But unexpectedly, there was no explosion or crashing sound. The soldiers' comrades also had doubts. Stolovsky, have you drunk too much? Where are the missiles from the blue country? The 2 comrades who discovered the fireball soldier patted his helmet. After waiting for a few minutes and finding that there was still no movement, the 2 soldiers punched the soldier who discovered the fireball twice and continued to close their eyes and fell asleep. At this time, 2 drones that entered the atmosphere had begun to soar in the sky of this planet. There is no network, only radio signals. There are no skyscrapers. The tallest is only a few dozen reinforced concrete buildings. The planes are still old-fashioned jets. Is this civilization still in the World War II period on Earth? Mingze looked at the buildings on this planet through the drone and felt a little emotional. How is the language translation going? Mingze turned his head and asked Stover. Captain. Their several languages have been translated and transmitted to the system, and the content of their radio signals has also been translated and classified. Stover nodded. Let me see. There are more than 30 countries on this planet. The most developed among them are more than 10 small countries in the eastern continent, which are like Europe. Chapter 445, All Illusions. Besides that, there are 2 powerful countries, Hongo and Lango, on the northern continent, and a bunch of colonies similar to African countries on the southern continent. This is a good place. If we unify the primitive civilization on this planet and sell it to the Empire, how much would a 1% share of a living planet full of people be worth? Stover licked his lips. Let's go down and take a look, Captain. Carrie, get the multifunctional mecha ready. Stover also rubbed her hands excitedly. After getting Mingze's consent, the expedition ship entered the atmosphere of the planet from above the sea of the planet. 20 mechas flew out of the cargo hold of the expedition ship with air jets on their backs. At the Hongo Command Center, 500 kilometers away from the coastline, The commander-in-chief of the Hongo army was drinking and talking happily with his subordinates. Their Hongo tank troops have advanced to the hinterland of Languo. The steel torrent composed of hundreds of thousands of tanks and armored vehicles crushed all obstacles that dared to block the way. It only takes a week for their Hongo troops to advance to the capital of Languo, and then the northern continent will usher in its unification. However, just as they held a grand banquet to celebrate the victory of the war in advance, 20 mechas suddenly broke through the thick reinforced concrete outer wall of the headquarters and fell into the hall. With the screams of the people, the 20 mechas aimed their gauze machine guns at the fleeing crowd. "Everyone, don't move. Crouch where you are. Otherwise, our machine guns will not show mercy." Stover's voice came from a mecha. "Who among you has the highest position? Let him stand over." Li Mingze fired several shots at the top of the banquet hall with a machine gun, causing everyone to scream again, and then shouted to the crowd. I am the commander-in-chief of the army of Hongo." An elderly man who was about 60 years old walked out of the crowd. His subordinates tried to stop him several times, but he stretched out his hand to open them. "Excuse me, everyone. Where are you from? What do you want to see us for? Why don't you taste the wine first? Sit down and talk slowly in detail." The commander-in-chief made a gesture of invitation. "Let the AI take charge of the mechas, and we'll go down and take a look." Li Mingze nodded to the others while controlling the mechas. Soon, the cockpits of the 20 mechas opened outwards, and 20 explorers in power armor jumped out of the cockpits. The AI-controlled mechas would monitor the people around them, and their power armors could protect them from the attacks of the backward weapons of the natives, so everyone left their cockpits with confidence. Reaching out to open the armor on the chin, Li Mingze and others only showed their mouths. Right, respected officers, come and sit down. You see, these are the foods we just ate, absolutely non-toxic." The old commander picked up a plate of cakes and handed them to Li Mingze and others. "Stop. Don't eat." Li Mingze suddenly frowned and stretched out his hand to knock away Stover's hand that was reaching for the cakes. "What do you think? On an unknown planet, how low is the possibility of having several fruits that are exactly the same as those on Earth, and the other fruits are also specialties of the Empire?" Li Mingze frowned and asked the explorers around him. "Impossible. The probability is too low." Stow shook her head. "Everyone withdraw the mecha. Notify the stone wall to pick us up. There is a problem here." Li Mingze felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet, and hurriedly shouted to everyone. Hey, why are you planning to leave? Isn't it better to stay here? And did I let you go?" The old commander's tone suddenly became gloomy, and his facial features began to distort. Seeing this scene, Li Mingze and others hurriedly drew out their rifles and fired while retreating towards the mecha. However, the bullets they fired only exploded a pile of purple liquid after hitting the people, who began to distort in the hall, and the people who were hit quickly returned to their original state. Ha, you can't hurt me, just be my food," everyone in the hall suddenly shouted in unison. The high-ranking officials of Hongo, who originally looked like ordinary people, turned into monsters made of purple liquid, and the monsters' 2 claws were still waving in the air. "How is it? Has the stone wall arrived yet? Why is it so slow?" Li Mingze, who had returned to the mecha, shouted while controlling the mecha to fire wildly at the crowd. "No, sir, we have lost contact with Faye." Zizi Stova lost contact with Li Mingze before she finished speaking. "What's going on?" Li Mingze saw that the mechas around him were still intact, but they had lost contact with each other. "Captain, these monsters can block our signals," Stova suddenly shouted to Li Mingze through the mecha's speaker. "Let's go, let's retreat." Li Mingze threw away the machine gun that had been emptied of bullets and pulled out 2 howitzers from both sides of the mecha's thighs. As the grenades fell into the group of monsters, the explosion splashed pools of purple liquid, but these liquids gathered together again in just a few seconds after being scattered. "Not good. These guys are invincible, be careful to save ammunition." Li Mingze frowned. It seems that this is a special creature that is immune to physical attacks. When Li Mingze and his companions gave up blocking the monsters and rushed out of the building, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. Purple monsters that could not be seen at a glance appeared in the squares and streets around the building and rushed towards them. "Start the thrusters, let's go to the air," Li Mingze said, and a flame suddenly appeared behind him. The dazzling flame pushed the heavy mecha into the sky. The explorers behind him did not dare to fall behind, and they all ignited the thrusters and rushed into the sky. "Switch the jet engine to save energy," Li Mingze breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that none of the 20 people he brought out were left behind. At this time, everyone realized that the prosperous city they saw through the drone had changed into another look. One after another, dilapidated spaceships covered the ground. All the spaceships were broken into pieces, and the surface was full of signs of corrosion. Judging from the degree of aging of these spaceships, they have a long history. Damn it, everything we saw through the drone was an illusion. These guys disguised it to trick us. Judging from the number of these spaceships, they have obviously succeeded many times. Li Mingze pounded his fist angrily. Thank you, Captain, for saving my life just now. If I had eaten that snack, I don't know what would have happened. Stover bowed to Li Mingze, his eyes full of gratitude. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446 Mind Control. Suddenly, hundreds of huge tentacles made of purple mucus stretched out from the gaps in the wreckage of the spacecraft and stabbed directly at Li Mingze and others in the air. After several consecutive air rolls, everyone narrowly avoided the attacking tentacles. Fire, shoot all the ammunition. Li Mingze pulled out 2 howitzers and pulled the trigger frantically. The rain of grenades from everyone fell on the huge tentacles. Bursts of fire and pieces of purple liquid flew out of the tentacles. But the damage caused by the grenade explosion can be restored to its original state in just a few seconds. Captain, what should we do? We don't have enough fuel to fly out of the atmosphere. Xiao was so scared that her voice was shaking. After all, these young people have been growing up safely under the protection of the Empire and have never experienced strong winds and waves, let alone the test of life and death. Keep flying upwards. I don't believe this evil. Li Mingze gritted his teeth and controlled the mecha to rush to higher altitude. But no matter how high they flew, the purple tentacles behind them kept chasing them, as if their length could grow indefinitely. But the flying height of the Empire's mecha is limited. After flying for a while, the mecha's thrusters began to fail. After a brief flash, the thrusters of everyone stopped working, and everyone fell to the ground. I don't want to die, Stova screamed desperately as she looked at the purple tentacles getting closer and closer. Don't worry, you won't die. Suddenly a warship broke through the clouds and rushed towards the purple tentacles. The main guns and secondary guns on the warship were still bombarding the purple tentacles, and beams of light instantly evaporated the purple mucus that was attacked. This spaceship was the Stonewall frigate. Thank God, you finally got here. You did a great job. Stover rushed into the cargo hold of the expedition ship, took a few deep breaths, and gave a thumbs up to Carrie, who appeared on the holographic screen. Let's leave this planet quickly. I don't know what these ghost things are. They are too scary. Stova also patted her chest that was rising and falling like waves. Okay, let's. Before Carrie finished speaking, the expedition ship suddenly shook violently, causing Li Mingze and others who had not yet stood firm to almost fall to the ground. I haven't let you go yet. Come on, let's merge into one, and you will become immortal. Suddenly, a voice full of temptation resounded through the sky. Through the holographic porthole in the cargo hold of the spacecraft, Li Mingze could see that hundreds of huge purple tentacles had tightly surrounded the expedition ship in the center. Damn it, fire! Let's rush out, Li Mingze shouted and turned his head, but strangely, no one paid attention to him. Become immortal, become immortal. When he turned around, he found that everyone's eyes had turned purple, and they were still talking to themselves. Mind control. Li Mingze's pupils shrank. He didn't expect that this unknown race could control his team members from such a distance through the thick shell and shield of the warship. Tianyi, are you there? Li Mingze hurriedly connected the communication to the Empire. Your Majesty, I'm here. Li Mingze breathed a sigh of relief after hearing Tianyi's voice. Tianyi, you immediately take over all the control systems of this spaceship. Drive the spaceship away, and notify the biochemical troops to isolate everyone on this spaceship. Li Mingze turned off the communication and walked towards the reactor room of the exploration ship. As he stepped into a corner of the reactor room, a light curtain swept across his body, and a secret door suddenly opened on the wall of the reactor room. Li Mingze walked sideways into the secret door, and saw that this secret room had his special armor and various weapons placed on the shelf. After putting on the special power armor, He took out 2 particle submachine guns from the shelf and inserted them into his waist, and then picked up a heavy ion machine gun from the box. He nodded with satisfaction. After carrying the weapons through the corridor of the spaceship, Li Mingze jumped down from the cargo hold door that had just been opened. After he entered the air, Tianyi immediately controlled the spaceship to rush into the air. As Li Mingze kept pulling the trigger of the ion machine gun in his hand, the ion machine gun smashed the tentacles blocking the expedition ship one by one. The thruster at the rear of the expedition ship, which lost its obstruction, suddenly ejected a burst of angry flames, which turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the air. After pulling the trigger several times to exhaust the service life of the ion cannon, he took out the fusion battery from the ion cannon and inserted it into the back of the power armor. As Li got closer and closer to the ground, Li Mingze began to control the thrusters on the power armor to fly him to the tallest building in the city. This building is a large battleship that is inserted obliquely into the ground. Unlike other battleships, the appearance of this battleship is relatively well preserved. Li Mingze decided to go there to see if he could find some useful clues. After a short flight and dodging dozens of tentacles, Li Mingze rushed into the wreckage along the hole in the wreckage of the battleship. It was extremely quiet. This was the only feeling Li Mingze had after entering the wreckage of the spaceship. In the wreckage of the spaceship, it seemed that all the monsters had disappeared, and the world returned to normal. Pulling out 2 particle submachine guns, Li Mingze walked carefully along the corridor towards the bridge. To his surprise, he did not encounter a single monster along the way, not even the wreckage of the original crew of the battleship. According to the topographic map marked on the wall, Li Mingze came to the bridge door of the battleship. The alloy door of the bridge was tightly closed, with no gaps around it. Thick dust had covered the logo on the door. It seemed that the door had never been opened, let alone broken open by force. After pulling out a beam energy blade and drawing a big circle on the door, Li Mingze kicked the cut metal block into the bridge with a strong kick. He carefully walked into the bridge through the cut circular hole. Because the entire bridge has been in a closed environment, even though it is unknown how many years have passed, there is still not much dust. When Li Mingze walked to the command seat, he found a skeleton sitting on the seat, holding a pistol in the skeleton's hand. The bullet hole in the center of the skeleton's forehead indicated that the captain chose to end his life in the last moment of despair. "What on earth have you been through?" Li Mingze muttered to himself as he looked at the skeleton's empty eye sockets looking forward. As Li Mingze's hand gently wiped away the thin layer of dust on the console, the lights on the console began to light up. Holographic screens appeared around the bridge, and the lights of the entire bridge began to light up. Chapter 447 Civilization Devourer. And as all the lights in the bridge were turned on, a pleasant female voice appeared in the bridge, but the meaning of the female voice was not clear. "Start cracking the system and convert all languages into Chinese." Li Mingze frowned slightly and put the terminal in his hand on the console. A golden light penetrated from the terminal into the console. It is detected that the unknown highest level of authority has been opened. At present, all systems on the spacecraft except the bridge are offline. The female voice that just appeared turned into Chinese and appeared in Li Mingze's ears. "Search the spacecraft log. I want to know what happened here," Li Mingze shouted to the existence that seemed to be the shipborne intelligence. Searching, found the captain's log. "Do you want to open it?" After a while, a holographic screen appeared in front of Li Mingze, and the holographic screen showed video logs of various dates. Play from the first one in sequence. Start playing log 001. In the picture, a young man was sitting on the command seat in the bridge with a sad face, but what was puzzling was that the entire bridge was empty and there was only him. Anyone who sees this log, no matter what civilization you are from, please leave as soon as possible. These logs are my warning to you. A year ago, a scientific expedition team of our civilization discovered a primitive civilization in a desolate star system. For research purposes, the research vessel landed on the planet of this primitive civilization. Through various observations, the expedition team members determined that this planet is very suitable for their survival. Coupled with the backward technology of the natives, our expedition team let down their vigilance, but, according to the only survivor who escaped in a spacecraft, this planet is a complete trap. Everything on it is an illusion created by an unknown race. These illusions were transmitted to the minds of the expedition team members through electromagnetic waves. When the expedition team members arrived on the planet, these monsters revealed their true colors. They devoured the expedition team members. This is not the most important thing. You have to remember what comes next. They can obtain the memory of a creature by devouring it, including the coordinates of the civilization where the creature is located. They discovered the coordinates of the galaxy where our civilization is located by devouring the memories of the expedition team members. If you and your team members fall into their trap like we did, don't let them devour your teammates alive. They will find your civilization through memory. If you think that even if they know the coordinates, they can't cross the endless sea of stars to reach your star field, then you are wrong. This terrible monster. They are a whole. The planet you are standing on is its body. This planet can not only launch mental attacks and illusion attacks, but also travel at super light speed. Our civilization is vulnerable to its powerful body, and all the warships that can be sent out have been destroyed by it. Now, the colonies of our civilization have been almost devoured by it, and only this planet behind me is left, but I won't let it succeed. My spaceship carries the last super weapon of our civilization, a whole spaceship of fusion weapons. The log kept playing until the spaceship crashed into the surface of the planet. I want to detonate. I can't commit suicide. The young man in the video suddenly began to uncontrollably point the pistol at his waist at his head. The button that could detonate the nuclear weapon was only 20 centimeters away from him, but he was controlled by the planet and could only watch the button and pull the trigger. After the sound of a bullet smashing an object, the young man fell weakly on the command chair, and the video ended. Tianyi, can you receive my communication? Mingze suddenly fell silent and began to call Tianyi's name in his mind. But no one responded to him, as if he had been separated from this world. Is it this button? Mingze opened his eyes and saw the red icon flashing on the console. I don't know how powerful it is. After pressing the red icon, Mingze closed his eyes again. With a dazzling flash, a huge ball of light appeared on the surface of the planet. As the ball of light continued to expand, a large amount of purple mucus was evaporated into gas. Bursts of screams resounded through the sky, but due to the vacuum of the universe, this scream was confined to its atmosphere and did not spread. The first thing Mingze did when his consciousness returned to the Imperial Palace was to summon Tianyi. Has the exploration ship returned? Wiping off the nutrient solution on his face, Mingze sat up from the landing chamber. The exploration ship is on its way back. Our deep space exploration satellite just captured this picture, Tianyi said and waved his hand. A picture of a white ball of light rising from a planet appeared in front of Mingze. What was the effect of the explosion? Mingze stood up from the hibernation chamber and put on the pajamas handed over by the maid. The effect of the explosion is unknown. The planet disappeared from its location, but the traces left at the scene show that it was seriously injured. Tianyi's eyes flashed with a trace of worry. Count this planet into the highest level file. The file classification is a level 1 threat, and the threat name is Civilization Devourer. Mingze nodded. Now they don't know where this damn planet has escaped to, but it will definitely show up again one day. Such good experimental materials can't be let slip away from hand, Mingze thought with a cruel smile. In the distant deep space, a fleet of tens of thousands of warships of various sizes was suddenly spit out by a gray hole. The distance of this wormhole is somewhat inconsistent with your estimate. Several middle-aged men who were a little tired questioned the middle-aged man in the lead. If Mingze were here, he would definitely be able to recognize that these people were the leaders of the three civilizations of Tucson, United States, Madara Federation and Slotchy Business Federation who escaped. These fleeing fleets set out from the new Human Federation star region and should have arrived in the star region of the Sith Empire a few years ago. But I never thought that the fleet of the Science Committee would come out for a stroll. Just in case, Mingze decisively ordered the fleet to blow up the wormhole exit. In this way, the fleeing fleets of the three countries were stranded in the wormhole channel for unknown reasons. Until recently, a wild wormhole node appeared fortunately, and they were spit out from the wormhole. Chapter 448, The Captured Tiger Shark-class Battleship. Where are we? Have we escaped the clutches of the Empire? Someone suddenly spoke up. I don't know, but we are scanning the surrounding star fields. Great, we have reached the other side of the Milky Way. The damn Sith Empire can't possibly catch up here. We are safe. The people staring at the detector screen cheered loudly. What did the high-ranking officials of their three countries do to leave their homes? Wasn't it to break free from the clutches of the Sith Empire and find an opportunity to rebuild civilization and take revenge? Now that they have reached a safe star field, the long road to rebuilding civilization has taken the most important step. Hey, look, our detector has found a creature with a strange shape in the star system. This creature looks a bit like a battleship. The three former national leaders gathered around, and they were very curious about what kind of existence was at the other end of the Milky Way. Yes, it looks very iron-blooded and beautiful. The creator is really amazing. He can create such a handsome creature. Order the fleet to attack and bring this creature back to me. A leader clapped his hands. If this creature can be studied thoroughly, the alien fleet of the Sith Empire will not be a concern. They can also create a huge fleet of creatures. Then it will be time for them to take revenge. Thinking of this, several people couldn't help but smile. Less than half a light year away from this fleet, a Tiger Shark-class battleship was flying leisurely. It is now within the coverage of the Empire's detectors. This star field has long been carpet searched by the Empire's detectors, which can ensure absolute safety. The patrol mission he is carrying out now is just a formality. The Empire has accumulated too many Tiger Shark-class battleships, and it is not a big deal to waste nutrient solution at home. So Mingze waved his hand and scattered half of the Tiger Shark-class battleships to the star system near the Empire's star field to play the role of patrol warning. Now the driver of this Tiger Shark-class battleship does not know what tragic fate he will encounter. Suddenly, dozens of warships, the size of Imperial destroyers, jumped out of hyperspace around the slowly flying Tiger Shark-class battleship. Large nets made of alloys tightly wrapped the Tiger Shark-class battleship. Although the Tiger Shark-class battleship kept struggling, there were too many alloy nets covering it, which had completely bound it. After confirming that the creature would not break free, 10 destroyers, original cruisers, of the escape fleet flew over and connected the metal nets to the rear of the spacecraft. 10 spaceships began to drag the Tiger Shark-class battleship towards the location of the escape fleet. When the Tiger Shark-class battleship was attacked, Mingze received the news. When he found out that it was an old acquaintance through the video sent back by the Tiger Shark-class battleship, he couldn't help laughing. What is the meaning of "you don't take the road to heaven, but you go to hell without a door"? This Three Kingdoms escape fleet perfectly interprets the meaning of courting death. If they had quietly slipped away, the Empire would not have discovered these fleets thrown out by the wormhole. But these guys had the bad luck to capture the Empire's patrol ship, and now he knew the coordinates. Tianyi, assemble the fleet, let's go meet these old friends who slipped away from us. Mingze laughed and switched his consciousness to the clone on the fleet flagship. Around the Three Kingdoms fleeing fleet, 3 Empire main fleets, a Tiger Shark-class fleet consisting of 5 million Tiger Shark-class battleships, and an alien fleet consisting of 5 million alien battleships, a total of 5 fleets slowly surrounded the fleet. At this time, the Three Kingdoms fleeing fleet had also dragged this space creature back to the fleet. Start scanning this creature. Beams of light shot out from the fleet's experimental ship, sweeping the Tiger Shark-class battleship from head to tail. Sir, there are some things I don't know if I should say. A scientist stood in front of the 3 former leaders with some fear. Go ahead, the 3 nodded. The creature you brought back is not a creature. There are a lot of artificial structures in its body. These structures include artificial missile launchers, beam cannons, thrusters and reactors. It can be said that this thing you call a creature is just a warship covered with a biological shell. Not only that, we also scanned that there is a pilot in this warship. The scientist paused and told the truth. Artificial. The 3 former leaders were shocked. Cut this biological warship open for me, and we will interrogate the pilot of this warship. The 3 suddenly felt that the position where they left the wormhole passage was no longer so safe. Yes, sir, the scientist nodded and turned away, leaving the 3 with a back view. Inside a multi-purpose mobile dock, the Tiger Shark-class warship was firmly fixed on the dock. As beams of light continued to cut the outer shell of the Tiger Shark-class warship, the energy-absorbing armor of the Tiger Shark-class warship soon reached its maximum tolerance value and shattered to the ground with a burst of shattering sounds. Of course, this was mainly because Mingze did not activate the shield of the warship in order to give these people a surprise. As the cutting beam continued to work hard, the entire Tiger Shark-class battleship was cut open bit by bit until the cabin where the driver was located was exposed. Open it, the 3 leaders commanded from the control room on the top floor of the dock. A fully armed soldier walked towards the cabin door that had been cut open with a gun. The soldiers grabbed the gap in the cabin door and pulled it down, revealing the corruptor driver staring at them from inside. Raise your hands, you have been captured by us, the soldiers shouted at the corruptor driver. The expressionless corruptor driver obediently raised his hands and was handcuffed by the soldiers and taken to the interrogation room. At this time in the interrogation room, the three leaders had already sat behind the protective glass, ready to personally interrogate this corruptor who seemed to be of the same race as them. "What's your name?" one of the leaders asked. "Andre 001, the corruptor replied expressionlessly. "And there is a number, is it a clone?" the three leaders discussed for a while. "Where are you from?" the three leaders paused and asked the information they wanted to know most. "Me, I am Patrolman 001 of the 23rd Squadron of the 1000th Battalion of the Sith Empire's Tiger Shark-class fleet, responsible for patrolling the H-212A, 4-star system," the corruptor answered honestly. Chapter 449 Special Prison. "What did you say?" the pupils of the three leaders shrank, and a chill suddenly rose in their hearts. "I am from the Sith Empire," the corruptor repeated again. Sith Empire. The three leaders suddenly felt that their eyes went dark, and the whole world began to spin. "Why, we have crossed most of the Milky Way. How can we still encounter the Sith Empire? How big is the territory of this damn Sith Empire? Could it be that they have occupied most of the Milky Way?" a leader said to himself in despair. "Fake, absolutely fake. The Sith Empire cannot have such a large territory. It must be a spaceship that accidentally entered the wormhole and lost contact with the Sith Empire. Yes. Otherwise, why is there only one battleship out on patrol? It's definitely true. Another leader has begun to go a little crazy and keeps hypnotizing himself. In fact, when I was attacked by you, I had already sent your coordinates to the Imperial Command," the captured corruptor said, another piece of news that terrified them in a calm tone. "Damn it! Damn it! Damn it!" The three leaders were shocked, leaving the corruptor behind and rushed to the bridge. "Alarm! Alarm! 5 fleets of unknown forces are approaching! Alarm! Alarm! 5 fleets of unknown forces are approaching!" Just as the three were on their way to the bridge, a shrill alarm suddenly sounded. The three gritted their teeth and increased their speed, rushing into the bridge at high speed. "Do you have detailed information about these 5 fleets?" One of them grabbed an officer in charge of the radar and shouted anxiously, his saliva splashing the officer's face. Report to the chief. The situation of the other 5 fleets is a bit complicated, you can see for yourself." The officer slid the holographic screen in front of the three leaders. Looking at the total number of more than 10 million Imperial warships on the screen, the three looked at each other, their eyes full of despair. "Old friends, surrender, you have been surrounded." Li Mingze's figure suddenly appeared on the holographic screen of the flagship bridge where the three were. It was indeed the Emperor of the Sith Empire who had made them lose their homes. "If you are willing to surrender, I can still let you enjoy your old age, but if you refuse, your wife, children, friends and subordinates will be buried with you in a sea of stars." Li Mingze showed a cold smile. The three leaders looked at each other again, communicated with each other through their eyes for a moment, and finally reached an agreement. "We are willing to surrender, but you have to keep your promise to let us enjoy our old age." The three sighed, and the whole person seemed to have aged a lot. Facing the Imperial fleet, which was far stronger than them in both quantity and quality, they could not raise the thought of resistance at all. If they had a determination to fight to the death, they would not have fled with the fleet at the beginning. "Very good, you know the current situation. I was planning to use you to train new recruits after you refused, but it's a pity." Li Mingze clicked his tongue twice and shook his head with some disappointment. Hearing Li Mingze's words, the three of them broke out in cold sweat instantly. They were almost wiped out, and the Emperor of the Sith Empire did not intend to give them a second chance. All warships shut down their thrusters and weapons and surrendered to the Sith Empire. The three of them made their last broadcast to the fleets of their respective civilizations and then shut down the communication. They lay exhausted on their chairs. Their rule ended today. One landing ship after another carrying the Imperial Marines entered the surrendered warships. In less than an hour, the 3 fleeing fleets fell into Li Mingze's hands. The 3 former leaders also boarded the Empire's flagship Michigan under the escort of the Marines. Walking in this dreadnought built by the previous generation of civilization, the 3 former leaders swore that they had never seen such a huge warship in their lives. The technical level that could build such a warship was beyond their reach, and they did not deserve to lose. A few minutes later, the 3 were escorted by soldiers to the bridge of the Michigan, where Li Mingze had been waiting for a long time. "Long time no see. Since you slipped away from my hands, I have been thinking about you very much." After seeing the 3 people walk into the bridge, Li Mingze clapped his hands and laughed as he greeted them. "Winners take all, losers take all. We admit defeat. I hope you can keep your promise, the three snorted coldly and said to Li Mingze. Of course, as the emperor of the Sith Empire, I will keep my word. After saying that, Li Mingze winked at the soldiers behind the three. The three soldiers took out a syringe from their waists and stabbed them into their necks while the three were not paying attention. You don't keep your word. The three fainted on the ground with unwillingness in their eyes. Of course I keep my word. Come on, transfer them to a special prison. Li Mingze waved his hand. The soldiers dragged the three leaders who had fallen into coma and disappeared into the corridor. A few days later, a transport ship descended from the sky above a Death Star in the Empire's star field, and thousands of hibernation chambers were pushed out from the transport ship. All of these hibernation chambers were relatives, friends and important subordinates of the three leaders. As these hibernation chambers were pushed into the elevator platform raised under the Death Star, the elevator platform began to slowly sink into the ground, and a series of heavy alloy gates were closed layer by layer following the elevator platform. As the name implies, special prisons are places where special prisoners are imprisoned, including citizens of the Empire who are not guilty of capital crimes and some captives that Li Mingze swore not to kill. All eligible prisoners will be anesthetized and put into a dormant chamber, where their consciousness will be connected to the virtual world. These people will spend their entire lives in the virtual world until the end of their lives. These people will no longer pose any threat to the Empire, and Li Mingze did not break his oath, allowing these people to spend the rest of their lives peacefully. When the three former leaders opened their eyes, they found that they and their family and friends had been placed on a huge island. The Empire has prepared manors and villas for them, and all their future expenses will be paid by the Empire for them, but as a price, these people cannot leave this huge island in their lifetime until they die of old age. Although they have lost their freedom, being able to spend the rest of their lives leisurely with fine clothes and delicious food is a relatively happy ending. The three former leaders are quite satisfied with the Empire's arrangements. The target has been placed, and the body functions in the dormant chamber are functioning normally. Our mission is complete. Retreat. The soldiers who sent the dormant chamber into the prison turned around and boarded the elevator platform and ascended to the surface port of the planet. Chapter 450, Attacking the Civilization Devourer. 3 days later, the civilization devourer that had previously hidden in hyperspace finally returned to the real world from hyperspace. With a huge hyperspace energy it carried out when it left hyperspace, the Empire's hyperspace wave detector soon discovered this behemoth. Li Mingze was surprised to find that after experiencing a violent nuclear explosion, the size of this civilization devourer was obviously a little smaller. It seemed that it had replenished the purple liquid in other parts in order to repair itself. Your Majesty, what should we do? Tianyi came to Li Mingze, who was observing the civilization devourer through the holographic screen. Li Mingze paused. Notify Eva and ask her to come to my office. Yes, sir. Tianyi's figure disappeared, and soon Eva, wearing a black lace cheongsam, swayed her graceful figure and walked in front of Li Mingze. Eva placed her hands with black lace gloves on Li Mingze's desk, revealing her proud cleavage. Your Majesty, what's the matter with calling me here? You haven't come to see me for a long time. Eva cast a resentful look. Stop messing around, let's talk business. Li Mingze frowned and shouted in a stern tone. Your Majesty, what do you want to talk to me about? Eva straightened her expression and stood up straight. If I give you all the resources of the Empire, how many mechanical warships can you build? Li Mingze sent Eva the data of the docks currently owned by the Empire. How long will it take? Eva obviously knew that the matter was very serious, and the last trace of frivolity disappeared. 6 months, Li Mingze said in a positive tone. If the time was too long, he was afraid that this civilization devourer would leave this star field after not finding supplementary food. Excluding the time taken by the warships under construction, and requisitioning civilian factories, I can produce 200,000 warships with the same strength as the Empire's destroyers in 6 months. Eva closed her eyes and calculated, and came up with an accurate number. Okay, this is the rough design of the warship, you can take it and improve it. These warships must all be based on energy weapons, and the rest of the space must be equipped with nuclear weapons. Li Mingze threw the design drawings of the spacecraft on the table. Got it. I will revise the design. Eva took the design and walked towards the door. When she was about to leave the room, she suddenly remembered something and turned to Li Mingze and asked, when will my construction authority be unlocked? From the moment you leave this room, you can control all the factories and shipyards in the Empire. Li Mingze turned his chair and turned to face the wilderness outside the palace. A few hours later, all the companies in the Empire received a notice from the Empire that in the next 6 months, their factories and shipyards would be unconditionally requisitioned, and the losses caused would be borne by the imperial government. The production lines used to produce civilian hovercrafts began to manufacture some of the most common parts on warships. These parts were first assembled in small factories and then installed in warships, which could save a lot of time for the shipyards. In this way, more warships could be built in a limited time. After all, the number of shipyards was limited. The short 6 months passed in the blink of an eye. During these 6 months, the Empire used various detectors to surround the star system where the Devourer of Civilization was located. Every move of the Devourer of Civilization was under the close surveillance of the Empire. Fortunately, this civilization devourer did not leave the star field, even though it was severely damaged and had not received any supplies. Mingze did not know that 6 months might seem a long time to him, but for these creatures that have existed in this universe for hundreds of millions of years, it was just a blink of an eye, and it was not worth mentioning for their almost infinite lifespan. In these 6 months, Eva also successfully built 200,000 mechanical warships that were as powerful as the Empire's active destroyers. The Tiger, Shark and Alien warships were about the same strength as the Empire's active frigates. The newly assembled mechanical fleet did not alarm anyone in the Empire and quietly flew to the star system where the civilization devourer was located. Fearing that he would be controlled by the mind or be confused by illusions, Mingze took a destroyer and hid far away in a neighboring star system, accompanied by Eva's body. Mingze was worried that if Eva was also controlled by the devourer of civilization, the consequences would be very serious. 200,000 mechanical warships would be out of the control of the Empire. In order to avoid this, Mingze ordered Eva to add automatic combat programs to these warships to get rid of Eva's control. The fleet is about to reach the target, 10 seconds countdown. 10 seconds later, a fleet of 200,000 mechanical warships appeared next to the Devourer of Civilization. The Devourer of Civilization seemed to have discovered this fleet long ago, and did not show any abnormality after the mechanical fleet appeared. "What is it doing?" Mingze asked in confusion. "Let me see if it is releasing phantom electromagnetic interference to the experimental subjects in our fleet. Our experimental subjects have fallen into the illusion." Eva put the real-time video of a death row prisoner tied to a chair in front of Mingze. It turns out that this guy can directly change the external things that people feel through electromagnetic waves. Give this experimental subject various stimulations to see if there is any way to get him out of the illusion. Mingze waved his hand and sentenced the poor death row prisoner to the 18 major tortures. Mechanical arms of various styles stretched out from under the death row chair, first with constant electric stimulation, followed by physical damage. Various awakening methods began to be used on this experimental subject. But to Mingze's disappointment, there was no way to wake this man up. "Give up, order the special combat team to start landing on this planet." Following Mingze's order, 10 fully armed soldiers landed on the civilization devourer through the orbital airborne capsule. These 10 soldiers were all agents from the Ghost Department. Their bodies were now underground under the blue bricks. In this way, even if there was danger, they could avoid their consciousness being read by self-destruction. Just like Mingze at the beginning, the 10 soldiers started fighting with the small monsters separated from the civilization devourer as soon as they landed. However, the civilization devourer obviously learned a lesson from the last time and used its huge mucus tentacles from the beginning. After Mingze escaped last time because of carelessness, the damage caused by the super bomb turret is still fresh in its memory. However, after a few seconds, this civilization devourer apparently gave up the idea of continuing to play tricks on these soldiers and began to initiate mental control. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.